Chapter 657. If you've never heard of the Sea Clan, have you heard of the Aquamarine Divine Palace? Ling Xiao asked again. Ling Xiao had heard of the Aquamarine Divine Palace from the Whale Island Master. According to the Whale Island Master, this sect might have some connection with the Sea Clan. However, the Whale Island Master didn't know what the connection was. Aquamarine Divine Palace. Master Bai Yun's eyes were filled with fear. Ling Xiao listened carefully. Among the 12 sects, this Aquamarine Divine Palace is extremely mysterious and terrifying. Although it's ranked second, many people believe that this sect definitely has the strength to become the head of the 12 sects. Master Bai Yun explained, there are no men in this Aquamarine Divine Palace. All the disciples are women. Furthermore, this sect is located in a huge ice lake in the northern part of the sacred dynasty. Unless they are willing, no one can enter. All women? And so mysterious? Ling Xiao frowned. Usually, such a sect would have something fishy going on. That's right. Of course, it wouldn't be a big deal if that was all. The key point is that the women of the Aquamarine Divine Palace are extremely vicious. They would often kidnap human men. After that, those men were never heard of again. Master Bai Yun continued. If he were to judge from Master Bai Yun's words, he really wouldn't know what this Aquamarine Divine Palace was like. The only thing he knew was that these people were all women and liked to kidnap men. Oh, I almost forgot. What's surprising is that the Aquamarine Divine Palace has never openly recruited disciples in the Heavenly Dragon Continent. The origins of their disciples are all very mysterious. Great Master Bai Yun added. That's even more strange. Ling Xiao stroked his chin and said, Thank you, Master. Then Bai Fei will stay with you and slowly train her. In the end, she is also a victim. As for me, I still have to rush back to the sect. The 4 sects tournament is about to begin. I can't miss it. This Master Bai Yun seemed to have something to say, but was too embarrassed to say it. Master, no matter what unhappiness we had in the past, we are now master and disciple. Furthermore, you have been overseeing the divine sword sect for me for a long time. Is there anything you can't say to me? Ling Xiao smiled. That girl said that unless Heavenly Venerate Demon Flame is dead, she won't call me father. Great Master Bai Yun smiled bitterly. In his opinion, such a thing was simply impossible. Even though Ling Xiao was now a 9th layer Transcendent Realm Master, the flame deity's cultivation speed was just as fast and was now much stronger than before. Just chasing after him was already strenuous enough. Trying to kill him was simply impossible. It's quite difficult, but no problem. Ling Xiao said with a smile. You agreed. Why not? Ling Xiao shrugged and said, The flame deity has tried every means to obstruct my cultivation and even tried to kill me many times. If I don't get rid of this old thing, am I still a human? Don't worry, not only will I kill him, I will also take back the wisdom bone for you. It's better to be careful. Don't force yourself too much. Great Master Bai Yun reminded. Master, in the past, I didn't even have the qualifications to enter Yuehua School, but now I'm already a core disciple. I even have to represent the sect to participate in the 4 sects martial arts competition. In this world, nothing is impossible. The key is whether or not we dare to think about it. Ling Xiao smiled and said, If we don't even dare to think about it, then what's the difference between us and a salted fish? That's true. If you can participate in the 4 sects martial arts competition, then the sacred dynasty should also be qualified to participate. To put it bluntly, the 4 sects martial arts competition is just a private competition. However, the sacred dynasty's martial arts competition is the most popular event in the entire Heavenly Dragon Continent. At that time, you will truly be able to see what the geniuses of the Heavenly Dragon Continent are like. Great Master Bai Yun nodded and sighed. At his best, he was just a low-level inner disciple. He didn't even have the qualifications to participate in the 4 sects martial arts competition. let alone the sacred dynasty's martial arts competition. He didn't expect that his disciple would actually be able to participate in such a grand event. This really made him feel gratified. There's one more thing that I almost forgot to tell you. I've already killed Ming Tian. That brat walked the path of evil and was actually completely controlled by the demon fox. Sigh, great master! This knot in your heart can finally be pacified. Before leaving, Ling Xiao told Great Master Baiyun about Ming Tian's matter. This was because he really didn't know whether he should say it or not. After all, Ming Tian was a disciple that Great Master Baiyun both loved and hated. Emoyen, oh Emoyen, you thought that you could completely defeat me by stealing my best disciple? But now, you've really lost completely. Even if you stole my wisdom bone, you're still a loser. Great Master Baiyun instantly felt his body and mind relax. Ling Zhao's rise, his daughter's return, and Ming Tian's death. Great Master Baiyun's cultivation had also started to increase with Ling Zhao's help. Everything seemed so wonderful. And all these benefits were because he had taken in a disciple called Ling Xiao. After returning to Yuehua School, Ling Xiao immediately handed Whale Island's master over to Wu Xiang. Ling Xiao gave his own opinion on this matter. It's very likely that there are sea race spies among the upper echelons of Yuehua School. Since Whale Island's master is already useless, why don't we use him to set a trap and lure them out? Although this might not be able to lure out all the spies, it would at least prove that Whale Island's master was right. The 12 sects had indeed been infiltrated, and the problem was very serious. A few days later, the former head of the law enforcement hall, Elder Jean, was ambushed by Wu Xiang and captured on the spot. This matter shocked the entire Yuehua School. They didn't expect that the Yuehua School's law enforcement hall's head would actually be a sea race spy. This problem was too serious. Fortunately, the Moonlight Fairy had stepped forward and removed Elder Jean from his position as head. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble would have happened? Originally, the sect had different opinions on this matter. The main reason was that the new sect master, Wu Xiang, was using this matter to attack the old powers. However, Whale Island's master's confession, coupled with the video released by Heavenly Venerable Heavenly Eye, completely dispelled this suspicion. For a time, the Yuehua School became more united. Those who originally wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble also stopped moving. Of course, these matters were handled by Wu Xiang from the beginning to the end. After Ling Xiao returned to the sect, he went into seclusion in his cave abode. The appearance of the Sea Race, the Storm Army, the Yin Yang Demon King, the Heaven's Chosen Gate, and the Heaven's Chosen Sea Route filled Ling Xiao with thoughts of becoming stronger. He was lucky to have killed the Plague Demon King. He killed the evil Beast Demon King purely because the Moon Fairy had injured him. However, Ling Xiao wouldn't treat luck as strength because that wasn't reliable. The Demon Castle's Great Castle Master was a half-step Heavenly Venerable with 90% of his strength. He believed that the Yin Yang Demon King should at least be a Heaven Realm expert or even more terrifying. Chapter 658. Ling Xiao felt that the people he would be facing in the future would be more terrifying and powerful than ever before. Therefore, he couldn't relax in the slightest, no matter how the outside world changed. Becoming stronger was the only way out. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the day of the 4-sect martial competition. During this time, Ling Xiao not only used mid-grade spirit stones to break through to the peak of the transcendent realm 9th layer, but he also became more proficient in using the 3 types of will. His familiarity with the soul-controlling secret technique had also entered a new stage. Now he could control ordinary beasts and trees with the will of the mountains and rivers. Outside the immortal's cave, Zhao Ji was just about to approach when suddenly a bear rushed out and spoke to Zhao Ji. "What's wrong, Zhao Ji? Is something the matter?" Zhao Ji was startled by the black bear, but it was only an ordinary beast, so he quickly calmed down. Moreover, from the black bear's voice, it was Ling Xiao. Your senior brotherling. You can say so. What's the matter? The black bear asked. Senior brotherling, the four-sect martial competition is about to begin. The sect master ordered you to set off and specially sent me to inform you. Zhao Ji respectfully replied. And I understand. I'll go immediately. Ling Xiao withdrew his soul force. The black bear looked around in confusion before disappearing into the forest. These animals also knew how powerful Yuehua School's disciples were. They couldn't afford to offend any of them. After withdrawing his soul force, Ling Xiao headed to the sect's main hall. At this moment, Lan Yu, Tantai Lingzi, Lung Hao, and Dai Yuling had already arrived. As their masters, Chang Yueli, Chang Yueying, and Heavenly Venerable Golden Light would follow them. As the sect master, Wu Xiang naturally had to go as well. In any case, with the Moon Maiden overseeing the sect, he didn't have to worry too much. The flame deity had lost all his disciples and started cultivating in seclusion. He seemed to no longer place his hopes on his disciples and was wholeheartedly increasing his own strength. Ling Xiao discovered that other than him, the other four people's cultivation had increased to varying degrees. Lan Yu, was a half-step heavenly venerable with 50% of her strength. Tantai Lingzi was a half-step heavenly venerable with 30% of her strength. Lung Hao was an early-stage transcendent realm 9th layer cultivator. Dai Yuling was at the early stage of the transcendent realm. In contrast, Ling Xiao's cultivation had been progressing much more slowly during this period of time, mainly because he had been focusing on other aspects of his cultivation. However, reaching the peak of the 9th layer of the transcendent realm wasn't bad, much stronger than when he went to Demon Fortress City. However, this guy's appearance was still at the early stage of the transcendent realm. Keeping a low profile would make it hard for the enemy to figure out. What he didn't know was that the four of them had really put in all their effort to cultivate in the sect. They were so tired that they were almost exhausted. Relying on the benefits obtained from the Moonlight Pagoda, their cultivation would naturally advance by leaps and bounds for a period of time. However, after this period of time, unless there were other fortuitous encounters, it would be impossible for his cultivation to increase so quickly. Since everyone is here, let's set off. Wu Xiang glanced at everyone, feeling quite proud of himself. The current Yuehua school was no longer the same as before, especially Ling Zhao's strength, which was simply unfathomable. He believed that in this four-sect martial competition, he would definitely be able to achieve impressive results. Wu Xiang touched the crescent-shaped pendant hanging from his neck. Then a white light appeared and a huge treasure ship appeared out of thin air. It was more than 10 meters long and 6 to 7 meters wide, like a crescent moon. This is our Yuehua School's Moonlight Treasure Ship. In addition to having the attack and defense of a half-step Heavenly Venerable, its speed is comparable to that of a Heaven Realm Master. However, it requires spirit stones, which isn't something ordinary people can afford, so it's usually only used when participating in grand events like the four-sect martial competition or the martial arts festival. Wu Xiang explained, and the eyes of the Yuehua School disciples lit up. There was no doubt that this was a special kind of mobile puppet. The Moonlight Treasure Ship started moving and instantly flew away from the Yuehua School, heading towards the Sword King sect at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. 2 hours later, it was already noon. The Moonlight Treasure Ship pierced through the clouds and appeared above the Sword King sect. Its speed also quickly slowed down. Every sect was protected by a large formation. After approaching, if one was too fast, they might be attacked. Even Wu Xiang, who had just become the sect leader, knew this very well. What a beautiful scenery! The ship slowed down, and Ling Xiao also had time to admire the scenery of the Sword King sect. It had to be said that compared to the Yuehua School, the scenery of the Sword King sect was even more magnificent. It had a sharp and dangerous feeling like a swordsman. A huge waterfall poured directly from the top of the mountain to the bottom. What a great place! It's as if every inch of land and every leaf is condensed with sword intent. It's so exciting to see. Ling Shao said with emotion. Isn't that so? The history of the Sword King sect isn't any worse than the Yuehua school. Moreover, although they haven't fallen, their recent rise has far surpassed the Yuehua schools. They really can't be underestimated. Lan Yu said with a smile. The Moonlight treasure ship landed, and the Sword King sect sent an outer sect elder and a few outer sect disciples to welcome them. Their attitude was still considered respectful. However, it made people a little unhappy. This Sword King sect is obviously looking down on our Yuehua school. It's always like this during every 4 sects tournament. The people who welcome the Beast King Palace are always the inner sect elders, and the people who welcome us are always the outer sect elders. As the former head of the Yuehua school, Chang Yueying had also been to the Sword King sect a few times. She had always been brooding about this matter. Respect needs to be earned with strength. Wu Xiang sneered. I believe that after this 4 sects tournament, they won't dare to look down on our Yuehua school anymore. Oh, when did the Yuehua school change its head? But it's useless. It's the same all the time. It's still the trash of the 12 sects. Suddenly, a very unpleasant voice sounded. Everyone turned their heads and saw a 2-legged flying dragon descending from the sky. On the back of the dragon were a group of people from the Beast King Palace. The one who spoke was an inner sect elder of the Beast King Palace. Wu Xiang sneered. Who's the trash? You'll know after this 4 sects tournament. The Yuehua school of today is no longer the same as before. On the other hand, the core disciples of your Beast King Palace were actually dealt with by us, an outer sect disciple. How laughable! You, the inner sect elder of the Beast King Palace, was so angry that his face turned red. Although he didn't want to admit it, Ling Shao, an outer sect disciple, had indeed killed the core disciple Wang Shi. All right. Everyone here is a guest. Don't ruin the harmony over such a small matter. The inner sect elder of the Sword King sect, who came to welcome the people from the Beast King Palace, stepped forward to mediate. Chapter 659. For your sake, I'll let this junior off. The Beast King Palace elder snorted and looked at Wu Xiang with disdain. He then led the 5 disciples of the Beast King Palace inside. 2 of them were Ying Wuya and Shi Jiao. Back then, Ling Shao had killed Shi Mei in the Plague Valley. Shi Jiao and Shi Mei were twins, and Ying Wuya was a core disciple of the Beast King Palace. At that time, Ying Wuya was ranked 9th. Now that he had obtained the Golden Rock Martial Soul Inheritance, Ying Wuya was ranked 2nd in the Beast King Palace, and Shi Jiao was ranked 5th. Both of them were very powerful. Ling Shao, you didn't forget about the Plague Valley, right? You don't have to go to the Beast King Palace. We'll fight tomorrow in the Sword King sect. Suddenly, Ying Wuya's provocative voice sounded in Ling Zhao's ears. Since you're provoking me, why do you have to be so sneaky? Ying Wuya, you better not disappoint me at the 4-sect competition tomorrow. Ling Shao laughed. Brat, you're crazy enough. Ying Wuya's pupils constricted, and he looked like a pair of eagle eyes. He looked very fierce. Ling Shao smiled, but no longer paid attention to Ying Wuya. Ying Wuya was so angry that his face turned ugly. Senior brother Ying, why bother arguing with him? Let's just take his life in tomorrow's battle. Shi Jiao said in a low voice. Of course. Everyone from the Beast King Palace followed the Sword King sect's inner sect elder to their residence. Let's go. Wu Xiang looked at the people from the Beast King Palace and said to the crowd, Elder, may I ask if the people from the Divine Sword sect have arrived? Ling Shao suddenly asked, Divine Sword sect? Oh, they arrived yesterday. They said they were going to play in the Sword King city, but a day has passed, and they still haven't returned. When the outer sect elder spoke, a disdainful and sinister smile appeared on his face. Ling Shao frowned. There must be something going on. Is the Sword King City the city at the foot of the mountain? Ling Xiao asked. That's right. If you guys are interested, you can go to Sword King City to play. In any case, the four-sect martial competition will officially begin tomorrow. The elder laughed. Fine, who wants to go with me? Ling Xiao asked. Other than Tantai Lingzi, Lan Yu, Dai Yuling and Lung Hao all nodded. Since that's the case, Lu Tsang, bring our guests to Sword King City. The outer sect elder sent an outer sect disciple he brought along as a guide, leading Ling Xiao and the others to Sword King City. Sword King City wasn't large. Its scale might not even be comparable to Celestial Peak City. However, this city was bustling with activity. It seemed as if martial artists from all over the world were here to play and trade. Everyone, let's go in. When they arrived at the Sword King City, Lu Tsang said respectfully, he was just an outer disciple of the Sword King sect. Although he was disdainful of the core disciples of the Yuehua school, he didn't dare to offend them. After all, they were transcendents while he was just a martial vein realm cultivator. The gap between them was too big. Unless he wanted to die, he really didn't dare to offend these people. To enter Sword King City, each person had to pay 1,000 low-rank spirit stones. This wasn't a small amount, and Lu Tsang had no intention of paying. However, this amount of spirit stones was nothing to Ling Xiao. He casually threw out 4,000 low-rank spirit stones to the guards. Not only did they have to pay spirit stones, but as long as you weren't a disciple of the Sword King sect, you had to pay. Of course, Lu Tsang didn't have to pay. After entering the city, the few of them couldn't help but reveal surprised expressions. Their first impression was that there were so many people here. From the outside, the city wasn't as big as Celestial Peak City, but the population in the city was more than 10 times that of Celestial Peak City. Haha, this is the most prosperous city in the eastern part of the Sacred Dynasty. Don't be fooled by its small size. It uses a special spirit array to separate several spaces. The actual space is almost the same as the imperial city of the Sacred Dynasty. Lu Tsang said proudly, this is a city that belongs to our Sword King sect. I guess your Yuehua school doesn't have it, right? What can we do here? Ling Xiao interrupted Lu Tsang's boasting and asked directly. Hee, esteemed guests, there are many fun places here. There are only things you can't think of, but nothing you can't find. Lu Tsang chuckled. Do you need a beautiful woman? Come here. Do you need a handsome young master? Come here. Do you need to spend a lot of spirit stones? Come here. Do you need to find exciting games? You can also come here. Here, you can buy almost all the high-grade goods in the Heavenly Dragon Continent, including monster beasts, vicious beasts, and cultivators. There's a special slave auction house here. Are you interested in shopping? Is there anything else? Ling Xiao asked lightly. Yes, of course. When it comes to Sword King City, the most famous place is the Colosseum. You can watch the battles between monster beasts and vicious beasts as spectators. It's absolutely exciting. You can also participate in the battles yourself. If you win, you can get a lot of rewards. Lu Tsang laughed. Moreover, the Colosseum not only has monster beasts and vicious beasts, but also some prisoners and slaves. In order to gain freedom, they will also participate in the battles. Recently, I heard that there's a new batch of goods. Why don't you go and take a look? Let's go there and take a look. When Ling Xiao asked, he had already released his powerful soul power and used earth vision and sky listening. The Colosseum should be located about a mile away from where they were standing. Okay, please follow me. Following Lu Tsang, the group arrived in front of a strange door. The door stood there, and you could even walk around it. In the past, it was just a door, but after it was opened, it was a brand new world. Hua! The moment the door opened, a cacophony of noises could be heard. There was applause, cheers. There were also battle cries. These sounds were completely intertwined, making the entire space seem to be boiling with blood. The Colosseum was very similar to the battle stage. The difference was that the battle stage was higher than the spectator seats. The battle stage of the Colosseum was a large circular pit, like a basin. There were rows of passages around it. At this moment, the Colosseum was already crowded with people. It was very lively. You guys have come to the right place. The Colosseum has no less than 100,000 people every day. It's definitely the most lively place in Sword King City. The disciples of Sword King's sect often come here to participate in the Colosseum. They want to hone their combat skills and earn some spiritual stones to spend. Lute Song smiled as he pointed at the dense crowd seated around them. The way he looked at Ling Xiao and the rest was as though he was looking at a bunch of country bumpkins. So the battle in the Colosseum shouldn't be a life and death battle? Dai Yuling asked curiously. Chapter 660. The winner lives and the loser dies. This was the rule of the bestial battle arena. This place was very cruel, but because of this, it was the best place to train people. The 10 core disciples of the Sword King sect had all experienced the desperate life and death battles in the bestial battle arena and survived in the end. Thus, not only were their cultivations strong, but their actual combat strength was also terrifying. Ling Xiao's heart was somewhat excited. Although the 4-sect tournament was important, it was only a spar. How could it be better than a life and death battle to train a person's combat skills? He really wanted to go on stage and try it out. Since the 4-sect tournament was tomorrow, it didn't matter if he went back later. Lute Song, if I want to participate in the bestial battle arena, what should I do? Ling Xiao asked. This is simple. As long as you are willing, you can directly ask. There are people over there who specialize in handling this matter. Lute Song pointed to a small room in the bestial battle arena. What about the rules? Ling Xiao asked again. The rules are very simple. As long as you meet the requirements, you can participate in the bestial battle arena. The rules are very simple. There are only 2. First, your cultivation is equal to or lower than the bestial, slave, or prisoner on death row. You should be able to understand this, right? It's not for you to go on stage and abuse the weak. Second, you have to pay at least 10,000 low-grade spirit stones for each challenge. If you win, you will receive more than 10 times the amount. But if you lose, you will die and the items won't be returned. At least 10,000? That means I can still pay more? Of course, at least 10,000 and at most 100,000. Lute Song replied. This rule was indeed simple and clear. Just like fighting in the pugilistic world, if one wanted to obtain greater benefits, they had to take greater risks. This was very much to Ling Xiao's liking. Everyone, please sit here. If you go any further, you won't be able to go any further. The closer you are to the bestial battle arena, the more dangerous it is. Furthermore, there are powerful forces blocking you. If you don't have enough strength, you will have to pay at least 10,000 low-grade spirit stones as a fee. It's not worth it. Although he seemed to be thinking for Ling Xiao and the others, in fact, there was a hint of contempt in his tone. This was because the first 3 rows in the Colosseum were usually reserved for the best disciples of the Sword King sect. Although Ling Xiao and the others were core disciples of the Yuehua school, in Lute Song's opinion, they were inferior to ordinary inner disciples of the Sword King sect. Are you looking down on us? Then you can stay here. Lung Hao couldn't take it anymore. He snorted coldly and continued to walk forward. Although the back was basically packed with people, the first 3 rows were relatively empty and comfortable to sit in. Lute Song, thank you for bringing us here. This is just a small token of appreciation. You don't have to accompany us anymore. Ling Xiao casually threw out 100 low-grade spirit stones as a reward, and then walked forward with the other 3 people. Just sit in the 3rd row. It has the best view, even better than the first 2 rows. He said as he walked. Okay. The other 3 naturally didn't have any objections. Dai Yuling and Lung Hao had long followed Ling Xiao's lead, and Lan Yu had gradually regarded Ling Xiao as the backbone. Naturally, they would listen to Ling Xiao's words. A group of self-righteous guys. Lu Tsang snorted coldly and then stood there, waiting to see the four people make a fool of themselves. However, what left him dumbfounded was that Ling Xiao and the other three did not show any signs of sluggishness in the face of the invisible air wall. They walked to the third row as if they were taking a stroll in the park and sat down. These guys are really not simple. It seems that the core disciples of the Yuehua school are not so useless. Lu Tsang had always heard from his senior brothers that the disciples of the Yuehua school were useless and useless. But today, it seemed that it wasn't completely the case. He couldn't help but have some doubts about the comments he had heard before. When Ling Xiao and the others sat down, the battle in the Colosseum had already ended. What made people sigh was that the challenger was beheaded by the death row inmate. Every time the death row inmate won a battle, he would be rewarded with some money. When the number of victories reached 100, he would regain his freedom. It was the same for slaves. Of course, those monsters and ferocious beasts were unlucky. Unless they died in battle, they had to face those fierce challengers at all times. Looking at such a bloody scene as a martial artist, it was natural for them to adapt. If a martial artist couldn't adapt to blood and death, then he could only be regarded as a useless person. In the stands, cheers and curses were intertwined. No one cared about the life or death of the challenger. They cheered because they felt that it was exciting and cool. They cursed because they lost money, not because they saw someone die. This was a beast fight. If you won, not only would you get spirit stones as a reward, but you might also break through the shackles. Therefore, the opponents that many martial artists chose were not those that they had absolute confidence in winning, because then there would be no meaning in training. But in this way, the chances of death would be even higher. Senior Brother Ling, you just asked Lu Tsang about beast fights. You want to challenge him, right? After sitting down, Lung Hao asked curiously. Yes. Ling Xiao indeed had such an idea. Then, are you going to challenge the ferocious beasts, the death row inmate, or the slaves? Lung Hao asked again. Death row inmate. Ling Xiao's answer was very clear and straightforward. Why? Lung Hao asked, somewhat puzzled. First of all, I definitely won't choose the slaves. Slaves have a tragic fate to begin with. I'm not a kind person, but I definitely won't lay my hands on such pitiful people. Secondly, I won't choose the beasts. Although the ferocious beasts of the same realm are usually stronger than the martial artists, in this kind of life and death challenge, humans can often erupt with more terrifying strength than usual. Choosing a human is better for me to hone my combat skills. As for the ferocious beasts, although they have intelligence, they are still too stupid. Lastly, prisoners on death row are different from slaves. Prisoners on death row are placed here because they committed crimes that deserved death. Although they are equally pitiful, they basically deserve to die. Even if you kill me, you won't feel any guilt. Although Ling Xiao would not go so far as to bemoan the state of the universe and pity the fate of mankind, he would try his best to not hurt innocent and pitiful people within the scope of his ability. This was also his bottom line as a human. He was a martial artist, but first and foremost, he was a human. Ha ha ha, this is really funny. There are actually people who treat slaves as humans. Those things are no different from beasts. Killing them is just killing them. How boring. Just as Ling Xiao finished speaking, a martial artist not far from them suddenly laughed and mocked. The people next to him also nodded repeatedly. Ling Xiao and the others turned their heads to look and found that these people were all wearing the Sword King Sect's uniform. Chapter 661. He didn't know the exact ranking of these 3 core disciples, but it was interesting to meet the core disciples of the Sword King Sect here. Lathe Person, who spoke, was one of the core disciples. At this moment, he had an arrogant and disdainful smile on his face as he looked at Ling Xiao and the others with a look of disdain. It was as if he was looking down on them. You are the core disciples of the Yuehua school, right? No wonder the Yuehua school is so weak. It turns out that they are a group of cowards who don't even dare to kill. That person added when he saw Ling Xiao and the others looking over. "Don't dare to kill." Ling Xiao suddenly revealed a sneer. His figure suddenly moved and instantly appeared in front of the core disciple of the Sword King sect. The sharp energy sword had already pierced the core disciple's body. "I dare you to say one more word." He didn't have the intention to kill this person for the time being. He just wanted to destroy the other party's prestige. Gulp. The core disciple of the Sword King sect, who was still high and mighty just a moment ago, was now like a pile of mud. The stench of feces and urine floated up. "If you can make a move, don't talk nonsense." This was Ling Xiao's method. What's the use of talking nonsense? It's more interesting to make the other party pee in their pants. Let him go. The other core disciples of the Sword King sect were shocked. Whether it was Ling Xiao's boldness or Ling Xiao's strength, they were all shocked. It's easy to let him go. Just kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistake. Otherwise, I'll kill someone in front of you today. Ling Xiao released his killing intent. The cold aura made everyone around him feel a terrible chill. If you dare to kill him, the Sword King sect won't let you go. You can try. Ling Xiao's energy, sword, continued to pierce the core disciple's body. It was only about an inch away from the core disciple's heart. As long as it continued, the core disciple would definitely die. I'll kowtow. It wasn't easy for a core disciple to reach this step. It was better to lose face than to die. After all, if a person died, there would be nothing left. Very well, at least you know what's good for you. Ling Xiao pulled out his chi sword, but his killing intent still enveloped that person. That core disciple of the Sword King sect gritted his teeth, then respectfully kowtowed and admitted his mistake. It's my fault. Nothing good comes out of my filthy mouth. It's good that you know you're wrong. Humph. Ling Xiao snorted coldly and instantly returned to his original position. What a terrifying fellow. That's the 8th-ranked core disciple of our Sword King sect. He actually knelt down and admitted his mistake? Lu Tsang, who was hiding in the back to watch the show, almost choked on his saliva. This scene was too shocking. Of the 3 core disciples, one was ranked 8th, one was ranked 9th, and the last one was ranked 3rd. They were also participants in the 4-sect martial competition tomorrow. The person ranked 3rd was called Wu Zonglian. However, he had no intention of making a move just now. It was unknown whether he was frightened by Ling Xiao or disdained to make a move. Just as Lu Tsang was puzzled, the spectators suddenly cheered. A new challenger had appeared in the beast fighting arena. That was a prisoner on death row. Look, it's the Undying Prisoner King. Undying Prisoner King? Ling Xiao looked at this person in confusion. Very strong. Also, it was filled with manic killing intent. The Undying Prisoner King has already won 300 matches in a row. He could have regained his freedom, but he is unwilling to leave because he likes it here. He likes this kind of killing. The host of the beast fighting arena said loudly with a voice that was infused with chi. Everyone might have forgotten the Undying Prisoner King's real name. However, I believe everyone has heard of the massacre in Asha City. He was the one who massacred the entire city. He massacred more than 1 million people just because he ate some tasteless food that day. He destroyed Asha City, and it's still in ruins today. It was very easy for a half-step heavenly venerate to destroy a secular city. However, there were basically no one who would really do it. However, the Undying Prisoner King was different. He did not care about killing people. 1 million people were like 1 million ants in his eyes. He loved to listen to the screams of others and even felt that it was the most beautiful music in the world. Thunderous cheers erupted from the crowd. Of course, there were also curses. They cheered because the Undying Prisoner King's battle record was too terrifying. 300 consecutive victories meant that 300 warriors had already died in his hands. As for the curses, it was because they despised the Undying Prisoner King's actions. After all, 1 million people's lives had been taken by this lunatic. Anyone with a shred of humanity would not like this guy. Unfortunately, no amount of cursing could kill this lunatic. These people only dared to hide behind the crowd and not attack because they were afraid of death. They did not dare to challenge the undying prisoner king. Ling Xiao sneered and slowly stood up. He said coldly, "I'll challenge the undying prisoner king. I'll pay 100,000 low-grade spiritual stones." After paying 100,000 low-grade spiritual stones, he would receive 1,000,000 low-grade spiritual stones or 10,000 mid-grade spiritual stones if he won. His voice was very loud and clear, and it was filled with an extremely cold, killing intent. Killing the undying prisoner king would not only give him spiritual stones as a reward, but he would also be able to hone his combat skills and get rid of this guy. To him, it was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. He had to do it. Almost everyone looked at Ling Xiao. They were surprised to find that the one who spoke was a teenager of 14 or 15 years old. His face still looked a little immature. He was still a kid. Was he going to fight the undying prisoner king? One had to know that the undying prisoner king's 300 consecutive victories were no joke. The 300 warriors that he had killed were all half-step heavenly venerables. No warrior below half-step heavenly venerables had ever dared to challenge the undying prisoner king because it was extremely irresponsible of their own lives. It was akin to courting death. Even so, 300 people had died. It was obvious how terrifying the undying prisoner king was. If it was 1 or 2 deaths, it could be attributed to luck. However, if it was 300 deaths, it was no longer luck, but absolute strength. Wu Zonglian and the other disciples of the Sword King sect sneered. They were still thinking about how to deal with Ling Xiao, but they did not expect him to court death. They could stay and watch the show. What a pity. I didn't make a move just now because I wanted to defeat him in the 4-sect martial arts competition. Looks like I won't have the chance. Wu Zonglian was a little disappointed. In his opinion, an early-stage Transcendent Realm 9th level cultivator challenging a half-step heavenly venerate with only 10% of his strength was definitely courting death. Not to mention, the undying prisoner king was the strongest cultivator in this realm. I heard that the Yuehua school is very poor. Their core disciples can't even use mid-grade spiritual stones and can only cultivate with low-grade spiritual stones. No wonder their disciples' lives are so cheap. They are willing to throw away their lives for spiritual stones. Ha ha ha, their cheap lives are even worse than death row prisoners. They deserve to die. The disciples of the Sword King sect spoke very softly, but it still did not escape Ling Xiao's ears. Chapter 662. Under Ling Xiao's cold gaze, other than Wu Zonglian, the rest of them were like rabbits that had seen a wolf. What? Who wants to learn from him and kneel down to apologize to me? Why don't we go to the beast battle arena to practice? Ling Xiao's eyes were filled with disdain and indifference. No one dared to accept Ling Xiao's challenge, including Wu Zonglian. Although Wu Zonglian believed that he could win, it was meaningless for him to risk his life for the sake of a few spiritual stones. Since you don't dare to fight and don't want to kneel down to apologize, then shut your mouths. Trash can obediently be trash. Ling Xiao sneered. Wu Zonglian's strength was indeed not weak. He was probably weaker than Tantai Lingzi and slightly stronger than Lung Hao. However, in front of Ling Xiao, he was not considered an expert. The surrounding people cast mocking glances at the disciples of the Sword King sect. However, this was the Sword King city after all. Although many people looked down on these trash who dared to talk but didn't dare to do anything, they still didn't dare to say anything. Ling Xiao did not pay any more attention to the Sword King sect disciples. After paying 100,000 low-grade spiritual stones, he jumped into the beast battle arena. The beast battle arena was very large, much larger than the sex battle arena. It covered an area of more than 10 acres. Therefore, many martial artists who could not perform well in the battle arena felt very comfortable here. As soon as Ling Xiao jumped into the beast battle arena, he sensed a sinister and evil aura rushing towards him. He could not help but frown. It was the terrifying aura of the undying prisoner king. This fellow's murderous aura was very strong. Sure enough, too many people had died in his hands. That was why he could brew such a terrifying, murderous aura. Of course, compared to the murderous aura of Yi Guxin's martial soul, it paled in comparison. Kid, you have guts. However, I am not someone who will show mercy. Even if you are a kid, I will still kill you. The chains on the undying prisoner king's body had all been removed. He twisted his neck and made a cracking sound. Then he looked at Ling Xiao with a fierce and contemptuous gaze. The way he saw it, Ling Xiao was simply here to throw his life away. That would be best. Ling Xiao said indifferently. If the other party was merciful, it would lose the meaning of training. How dare you? The undying prisoner king suddenly jumped up. He was about 2 meters tall and had an extremely strong body. However, when he jumped up, he was very agile, just like a gorilla. Speed, strength, accurate. It was no wonder that he was able to kill so many opponents of the same level. Let's give it a try. Ling Xiao let out a low groan and pointed his hand in the air. A total of 9 times, 9 qi swords broke through the air. Each of these qi swords whistled through the air, each one capable of easily killing a 9th-layer transcendent cultivator. Don't look at how he didn't even use any martial skills. Just this ordinary qi sword attack was already powerful enough. The immortal prisoner king had just jumped up when he saw the energy swords flying towards him. He didn't even try to dodge. Instead, he swung his fists and smashed them towards the energy swords. His hands were wrapped in thick iron chains, probably the same iron chains that had once trapped him. This wasn't an ordinary chain. It was a precious artifact grade chain. It was an attack-type artifact. The 9 qi swords were all shattered by the immortal prisoner king's fists. However, the immortal prisoner king's attack was also stopped. However, Ling Xiao raised his hand again and sent out 9 more qi swords. This time, the qi swords were even faster. The immortal prisoner king wasn't able to shatter all of them. About 4 or 5 of them landed on his body. However, to Ling Xiao's surprise, the immortal prisoner king didn't show any signs of injury. Instead, he shouted excitedly, "Awesome! This is awesome!" Not only that, but Ling Xiao also noticed that nearly 1/10 of the immortal prisoner king's hair had turned red, giving off a strange and evil feeling. No wonder this guy is invincible. Such a strong defense isn't something an ordinary half-step heavenly venerable can break through. Unless one has a special ability, it's only a dead end in front of him. Ling Xiao tested the immortal prisoner king as he gained a clearer understanding of the immortal prisoner king. Good lad. Looks like you're not as weak as I thought. However, it's useless. Your attacks are like scratching an itch to me. The immortal prisoner king said disdainfully. Ling Xiao didn't say anything and continued to attack. Then he noticed that the immortal prisoner king's hair was slowly turning red. 1/10, 2/10. Finally, it turned completely red. Ha ha ha, idiot. Can't you see that my hair has turned red? The immortal prisoner king laughed out loud. The genuine vitality all over his body had turned red. At that moment, he looked like a different person. His strength was equivalent to a half-step heavenly venerable with 2/10 of his strength. It would be strange if he didn't win since he still had such a move. So what if I see it? Ling Xiao was disdainful. He knew that there was something strange about the hair and wanted to see what was going on. Otherwise, the battle would have ended long ago. Go to hell if you see it! The immortal prisoner king roared. His fists suddenly turned crimson red. Even the iron chains that wrapped around his fists turned crimson red as well. Lava fire chain. The crimson iron chains shot out like 2 huge fire snakes and wrapped around Ling Xiao completely. The flames continued to burn, and the iron chains became tighter as if they were going to strangle Ling Xiao into pieces of minced meat. That kid is done for. Sigh, he got entangled by the immortal prisoner king's lava fire chain. No one has ever survived that move. What an idiot. Serves him right. Who asked him to stand there stupidly? He should have known that he was going to die. The spectators on the spectator stand were dissatisfied when they saw that Ling Xiao was entangled by the iron chains and was getting tighter and tighter. They thought that the kid had some ability and could hold on for a while longer. They didn't expect the battle to end so easily. However, their eyes widened the next moment. Ah! The one who screamed was not Ling Xiao, who was entangled by the iron chains, but the immortal prisoner king who was holding the iron chains. The immortal prisoner king desperately shook off the iron chains in his hands. His hands were already charred black. What an idiot. You're still too inexperienced to play with fire with me. Ling Xiao laughed disdainfully. The hellfire he had obtained from the ancient hell dragon was a flame even more terrifying than the 12 sacred flames. This kid is too strange. What did he do? Why are the immortal prisoner king's hands charred? Most of the spectators on the spectator stand couldn't understand such a strange phenomenon. They didn't even know how Ling Xiao did it. Your defense is very strong. I'll give it a try today, Ling Xiao said indifferently. His body suddenly flashed and turned into a strange afterimage. He instantly appeared in front of the immortal prisoner king. Chapter 663. Pucci. The sound of something being pierced was heard, followed by red blood splattering everywhere. The immortal prison king, with its invincible defense, was easily pierced by Ling Xiao's hand blade. It was like stabbing a piece of tofu with a knife. I don't understand. What's that guy's hand made of? How can it be so sharp? His hand seems to be wrapped in an energy sword and sword intent. Everyone could not understand. How could an ordinary-looking kid break through a defense that even a half-step heavenly venerable with 10% of his strength failed to break? Was he powerful? Or was the immortal prison king on the brink of collapse? Wu Zonglian's face turned ugly. He had sparred with the immortal prison king in private before, but it was not a battle to the death. Although he won, it was because of his sharp weapon. Although a transcendent realm cultivator could not achieve a perfect battle enhancement using an immortal-grade artifact, the sharpness of an immortal-grade artifact was unquestionable. It could easily break through the immortal prison king's defense. That was what he could not accept. That kid from Yuehua School's handblade was comparable to an immortal-grade artifact's destructive power? Ling Xiao did not care about what these people thought. His mind was focused on the battle. Immortal Prison King, I could have killed you in one move, but I won't do that. Ling Xiao said indifferently, I'll let you have a taste of death by 1,000 cuts. His ruthlessness was not inferior to the immortal Prison King's, but he would not take the initiative to kill innocent people. What the immortal Prison King did reminded him of the death of his beggar relatives. Those people were not killed because of any hatred. Someone just wanted to use them to practice martial arts. Those people in Ashes City were implicated because of the immortal Prison King's dissatisfaction. He was not happy about that. The immortal Prison King screamed in pain as the energy sword swept out. Ling Xiao was executing the immortal Prison King by 1,000 cuts. At the same time, he was applying what he had learned to a deeper level. The fusion of the energy sword and his will made it even more powerful. Each of his attacks would leave a terrifying wound on the undying prisoner king's body. In the end, the undying prison king's flesh was completely shaved off, leaving behind only a skeleton. The beast-fighting coliseum was dead silent. Almost everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Not only is this young man extremely powerful, but he also has such a cold temperament. He actually used such a method to cut the undying prisoner king into pieces. Satisfying. There were also some who felt that only a death by 1,000 cuts could appease the millions of lives that had died for someone like the undying prisoner king. Seal. The 3 sealing cards had now sealed the monsters. One of them was the half-step heavenly venerable that had just been sealed, the undying prisoner king. One of them was the half-step heavenly venerable that he had killed in demonic Castle City, the great castle master of demonic Castle City. The third one was a 9-tailed demon fox that had reached the heaven-tier one-line realm. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, the 3 sealing cards had sealed something which made people feel more at ease. Although these could not be considered as Ling Xiao's own strength, they were excellent means to protect his life. He would not use them normally, but when he had to, he would not be stingy. Congratulations on your victory. May I ask if you want 1,000,000 lower-grade spiritual stones or 10,000 middle-grade spiritual stones? The host in charge of the Beast Fighting Coliseum asked. 10,000 middle-grade spiritual stones. Middle-grade spiritual stones were naturally more valuable to him now. From now to the Grotto Heaven realm, the spiritual stones he needed for cultivation were all middle-grade spiritual stones. The more he had, the better. Lower-grade spiritual stones could only be used as currency for the time being. After receiving his reward, Ling Xiao returned to his seat. He was not satisfied with this battle. If there were stronger opponents, he planned to try again. Ling Xiao returned to his seat, and his breathing was not disturbed. After the trip to the Demon Fortress City, his strength had really increased by a lot. Even he himself felt that this kind of strength was a little inconceivable. After the undying prisoner king's corpse was cleaned up, another person appeared in the Beast Fighting Coliseum. There was no mark of a prisoner on his face, but there was another mark, a slave. Ling Xiao did not know where these slaves came from. The only thing he knew was that these slaves must be related to the Sword King sect, and this Beast Fighting Coliseum must have an inseparable relationship with the Sword King sect. The slave's face was wearing a bronze mask with welded marks around it. It looked like it was directly fastened to the face after being heated. Just thinking about it made Lin Huang's face hurt. His hands and feet were shackled. His steps were heavy and his breathing was very unnatural. Clang! Clang! After 2 clangs, the slave's handcuffs and shackles were removed. After all, this was related to the Beast Fighting Coliseum's income. Therefore, the slave could not fight with his hands and feet shackled. That would give the challenger too much of an advantage. Because of the mask, Lin Huang could not see the other party's face, but his eyes were filled with incomparable grief and helplessness. He couldn't even make a sound because his mouth had been sealed, but those eyes seemed to be able to speak. After the grief and helplessness, they were filled with endless hatred and anger. Ling Xiao felt that unless there was a sky-high amount of hatred, it was impossible to have such eyes. He felt very uncomfortable. Torturing a cultivator like this was really better than simply killing him. The Sword King sect's methods were really not honorable. Even so, the Sword King sect still claimed to be a righteous sect, representing the justice and order of the sacred dynasty. Bullshit. Was there a righteous sect among the 12 great sects? They were just ordinary people who fought for their own interests. Of course, this was not a problem in itself, but they were doing one thing on the surface and another behind their backs, which was very disgusting. This is a slave cultivator we have just captured. His cultivation has reached the 6th heavenly layer of the transcendent realm. Today is his first battle. Who wants to come up and give it a try? No matter what cultivation the battle beast, slave, or prisoner was, the reward was the same. The spirit stones you paid would be returned 10 times. Of course, if you lost, you could forget about it because you would already be dead. If it was someone at the heaven realm or above who challenged, they would not have to pay low-rank spirit stones, but mid-rank spirit stones. However, such situations were relatively rare, at least not at this stage. The host announced the cultivation of the slave cultivator before turning to the crowd below. Wu Zue, you go and give it a try. You lost so much face just now. This time you must regain it. Wu Zongyan looked at the cultivator who had been scared to the point of wetting his pants by Ling Xiao and said, "This person's cultivation was only at the 7th layer of the transcendent realm, so it was reasonable to say that he was not qualified to participate in this challenge. However, he was a member of the Sword King sect, so he could be treated differently. These were the rules of Sword King City, so getting angry was useless." Chapter 664. Yes, senior brother. Wu Zue had just lost a great deal of face, so he naturally knew that he was no match for Ling Xiao. But if the slave's cultivation was lower than his, it would be a different story. He would definitely be able to kill him and regain his confidence. "Your cultivation has already surpassed this slave's, but it doesn't matter. This is a cultivation control ring. Once you wear it, you will only be able to display strength equal to your opponent's cultivation." When the host saw Wu Zue, he naturally recognized him as a core disciple of the Sword King sect. Although his ranking was relatively low, he still didn't dare offend him. In the Sword King sect, the top 10 core disciples were all treasures of the sect. In this regard, he was exactly the same as Wu Zue in Yuehua School. "Senior brother Ling, what do you think?" Leng Hao looked at Ling Xiao and asked, "Shameless." Ling Xiao coldly snorted and said, "What bullshit control ring? It's just for show. That control ring is just an ordinary jade ring. It's meaningless." "If that's the case, doesn't that mean the slave will suffer? No matter how strong he is, I'm afraid he won't be a match for Wu Zue, who is in the 7th layer of the transcendent realm." Although Dai Yuling wasn't as saintly as Zhao Xi, she was also very kind, but she wouldn't abuse her kindness. She, like many normal people, sympathized with these slaves. "You're right, but this is the rule of the Beast Battle Arena. This Beast Battle Arena belongs to the Sword King sect, so how could the Sword King sect allow their treasured disciple to be killed?" Ling Xiao said disdainfully, "I've already asked Lutsong. In all these years, there has never been a core disciple who died in the Beast Battle Arena. Not even once. Under normal circumstances, this is simply impossible. So that's how it is. That's really shameless." Leng Hao cursed. "The shameless part is yet to come." Ling Xiao sneered. Although that Wu Zue's cultivation is much higher than that slave's, his actual combat ability is too weak. He's like a flower that grew up in a greenhouse. In the battle later, he'll most likely be suppressed by that slave. There'll definitely be a good show to watch. It can't be, right? Senior brother Ling, no matter how shameless this bestial battle arena is, they wouldn't go so far as to directly interfere in this battle, right? Leng Hao said in surprise. "You'll know soon enough." He did not argue. He had seen many shameless people. This kind of thing was actually very common in the world. The host left the room. The slave's eyes suddenly changed. Originally, there was endless sorrow and helplessness, but now there was only hatred and anger in his eyes. This hatred was obviously directed at Wu Zue. No, maybe it's targeting the Sword King sect. Wu Zue was startled by the terrifying killing intent emanating from the slave, and he took 2 steps back. "Die!" The slave spat out these words furiously. His body turned into a beam of sword light as he lunged towards Wu Zue. He had no intention of holding back. Because he hated, he was originally a martial artist with a great future, but he was captured by the Sword King sect through despicable means and put on a bronze mask that could disfigure his face. He hated everyone from the Sword King sect, and he wanted to kill them all. The slave also used a sword, just like Ling Xiao. Although his swordsmanship could not compare to Ling Xiao's, it was more than enough to deal with Wu Zue. The beam of sword light was too fast, and Wu Zue was so frightened that he lost his composure. In a moment of desperation, he used all of his skills. The shadow of a death row prisoner appeared behind him. This death row prisoner was like the immortal prisoner king, and had once dominated the bestial battle arena. However, his winning streak was longer than the immortal prisoner king's, and he had won more than 1,000 matches. In the end, he died of exhaustion. He did not expect that his soul would become someone else's martial soul. The moment the death row prisoner martial soul appeared, Wu Zui's entire being became cold and cruel, and the frightened look on his face disappeared. This was one of the benefits of a martial soul. Bang! The two attacks collided with each other. A huge explosion sounded out, and the slave's eyes were still filled with burning hatred. There was nothing else in his eyes, and the only thought in his mind was revenge. Although the two of them retreated a few steps, the slave attacked again, not giving Wu Fei any chance to catch his breath. Wu Zui's fighting spirit was basically bestowed by the death row prisoner martial soul. His own soul was so weak that it made people speechless. After a few exchanges, Wu Zui panicked again. As for the slave, he had already called out his martial soul. It was a sword, a broken sword. It was the divine sword that had appeared when the Ling family was besieged and completely defeated the enemy. The reason why the Divine Sword Sect was called the Divine Sword Sect was because of that sword. This sword had actually become a martial soul. Ling Xiao suddenly stood up. His entire body was trembling. Because the slave was wearing a mask, he was unable to recognize his appearance. But at this moment, he was able to confirm the slave's identity. He was actually Ling Wuhen. He was the former sect master of the Divine Sword Sect, and he had gone with Ling Yihong to the Sword King sect to participate in the four-sect martial competition. How could he be here? How could he have become like this? Ling Xiao was trembling, not because he was afraid, but because he was angry. He wanted to kill. This kind of anger was something he had only felt when his family was killed. The terrifying killing intent emitted from his body caused Lung, Hao, and the others, who were sitting beside him, to turn pale with fright. On the War Beast arena, the battle continued. After releasing his martial soul, Ling Wuhen's fighting strength suddenly soared. In addition, Ling Xiao had given him an absolutely suitable and classic martial skill. After a few exchanges, Wu Zui was forced to retreat. "Kill him!" Ling Xiao shouted loudly. Actually, even if he didn't say anything, Ling Wuhen wouldn't let the person in front of him go, because it was the people of the Sword King sect who had turned him into his current state. He hated the people of the Sword King sect bitterly, and wished that he could raze the Sword King sect to the ground. Although he might not be able to do it, killing the person in front of him was not a problem. Dang! Seeing that Wu Zui's throat was about to be pierced by Ling Wuhen's long sword, the host suddenly jumped into the arena and blocked Ling Wuhen's sword light. The host's strength had reached 10% of the strength of a half-step heavenly venerable. No matter how strong Ling Wuhen was, no matter how talented he was, it was useless. In front of absolute strength, he was simply no match for the host. Enough! The host coldly looked at Ling Wuhen and said, "This battle ends here." Perhaps this was not the first time such a thing had happened. Most of the spectators in the stands were already used to it. They only cursed the shamelessness of the Sword King sect in their hearts. They had agreed to fight to the death, but now seeing that the slave had the advantage, they shouted to stop. What kind of logic was this in the world? But this was the Sword King city. Who told this War Beast arena to belong to the Sword King sect? Why? Chapter 665. Very simple, because I am stronger than you. Because the Sword King sect is stronger than all of you. The host looked at Ling Wuhen with disdain and said indifferently, "Go to hell." Suddenly, Wu Zui came back to his senses and pulled out a dagger from his waist and stabbed it towards Ling Wuhen's heart. At this moment, Ling Wuhen was completely defenseless. He was blocked by the host, and it was too late for him to defend himself. Pucci! A sword light flashed, and a head fell to the ground. However, the one who died was not Ling Wuhen, but Wu Zui. Ling Xiao made his move. How could he watch his benefactor and friend be killed by such a shameless person? Wu Zui deserved to die. The Sword King sect deserved to be destroyed. Ling Xiao stood there like a demon god. A terrifying killing and destructive aura covered the sky. You. You are crazy. You actually dare to break the rules of the animal fighting arena. Are you courting death? The host was stunned for a moment. When he saw Wu Zui's head fall to the ground, he shouted at Ling Xiao, "Rules? Weren't you the ones who broke them first?" Ling Xiao's cold voice was like the whisper of a demon king from hell. The host felt that his blood was about to be frozen. He retreated a few steps in horror and said with fear, "You have to think clearly. By doing this, you will become the enemy of the entire Sword King sect. Does your Yuehua school really want to be destroyed? With just you?" After saying this, a sword light flew out from his hand. The host's head also flew up and fell to the ground in a beautiful parabola. Bastard! Who dares to behave atrociously in the animal fighting arena? As soon as the host died, 3 terrifying auras suddenly appeared. They should be the powerful martial artists guarding the animal fighting arena. 3 half-step heavenly venerables with 50% strength. For the Sword King sect, sending 3 such powerful martial artists was enough to make the people going to the animal fighting arena behave themselves. After all, most of the martial artists who came here were half-step heavenly venerables and below. Ling Xiao did not pay attention to the 3 of them. Instead, he looked back at Ling Wuhen and asked, "Where is Ling Yihang?" Ling Yihang was a good brother that Ling Xiao got to know when he was in the Ling family. Although the 2 of them had gotten to know each other through fighting, and since Ling Xiao left the Ling family, they rarely had the opportunity to meet again. But friends were friends, even if they were separated by thousands of mountains and rivers. Ling Wuhen's problem was very serious, but Ling Xiao believed that he could solve it. Now he was more worried about Ling Yihang. Ling Wuhen only said one word before he suddenly stopped, because he could no longer speak. His eyes were filled with pain and resentment. "Ling Xiao, Ling Yihang was turned into a human puppet by these beasts, and only his soul is left in the puppet." Oh. Ling Xiao's heart was already cold. The entire Sword King sect was on his death list, but he was also very clear that the key was to find Ling Yihang. As long as his soul was not destroyed, he had a way to bring Ling Yihang back to life. He, Ling Xiao, could do what others could not. He is imprisoned in the cage of the animal fighting arena. Ling Wuhen said, "Take me there." Ling Wuhen nodded and then rushed in the direction of the cage. Ling Xiao followed closely behind. However, the 2 of them had just rushed out 4 or 5 meters when they were stopped by 3 experts. They were the 3 half-step heavenly venerables of the Sword King sect, who were responsible for guarding the animal fighting arena. Get lost! Ling Xiao did not have time to fight with these old things. He took out the sealing card without hesitation. Demon Castle Lord, release. A 60% half-step heavenly venerables against 3 50% half-step heavenly venerables should not be a problem. Boom! A loud sound reverberated, and those 3 half-step heavenly venerables were really sent flying. Ling Wuhen and Ling Xiao went straight in and came to the cage of the animal fighting arena. In the cage, Ling Yihang's corpse was still there, soaked in a big bucket of liquid. Beside the corpse was a puppet made entirely of metal. Ling Xiao could even feel Ling Yihang's aura. The corpse is still well preserved. This bunch of people should be intending to make this corpse into a human flesh puppet. Wu Hin, help me guard outside. I want to send Ling Yihang's soul back into his body. Since the corpse was well preserved, then there was no need to search elsewhere. But Ling Xiao intended to use some of the materials on him to strengthen this corpse. Not only did he want to restore its vitality, he also wanted to make it stronger than before. Outside, what's going on? Senior brother Ling seems to know that slave? Lung, how asked Dai Yuling suspiciously. You and he both came from Sky Cloud City. Do you know anything? Dai Yuling shook her head. Ling Xiao was originally a disciple from a small family in Sky Peak City and later came to Sky Cloud City. I'm not sure about the details, but from the looks of it, they seem to know each other and their relationship is very good. Let's go and take a look. Now that the three of us are on the same side as Ling Xiao, as friends are our friends, we absolutely cannot sit back and do nothing. Lan Yuer thought for a moment and said, "All right, Dai Yuling and Lung, how naturally had no reason to object. With Demon Castle City's Grand Castle Lord blocking those 50% half-step heavenly venerables, the three of them headed towards the cage without any obstacles. When they entered the cage and saw the miserable and hair-raising scene, they felt their scalps turning numb. This bunch of beasts. Lan Yuer cursed. "Senior Brotherling, tell us what to do. We'll listen to you." Lung Hao looked at Ling Xiao and said, "Help me to guard outside first. I still have some things to settle." Ling Xiao had gathered all the materials and was setting up the array. After that, he placed Ling Yihang's corpse and that puppet in the middle of the array. He wasn't willing to think about other things now. The most important thing now was to save Ling Yihang. This was the most crucial point. Lung Hao and the rest didn't disturb him, but stood guard outside together with Ling Wuheng. During this period, Dai Yuling and Lan Yuer helped Ling Wuheng remove the bronze mask and restored his severely damaged face. Among these two girls, Lan Yuer was good at medical skills, while Dai Yuling was good at planting and cultivating medicinal herbs. Their cooperation was simply flawless, although Ling Wuheng had suffered a little pain. But looking at his smooth face through the mirror, what was that pain compared to? Merge. Just as Ling Wuheng was feeling excited about his restored face, Ling Zhao's work had reached the last step. Merging the soul and body was not something an ordinary practitioner could do. Even a yin-yang realm practitioner might not be able to do it, but Ling Xiao could do it, because he was an array refiner, pharmacist, and a person with extremely powerful soul force. The soul-controlling secret art he obtained from the Lanternfish clan and the recently improved Mountain River will play a key role in this process. When Ling Yihang's eyes slowly opened, Ling Xiao finally let out a long sigh of relief. Chapter 666. Ling Yihang opened his eyes and saw Ling Xiao sitting in front of him. His eyes were filled with pain, self-blame, and guilt. Lei Ling Xiao allowed him and Ling Wuhen to participate in the four-sect martial competition, but he was made into a puppet and almost lost his life here. None of the other divine sword sect disciples who followed him survived. He was incompetent. How could he still have the face to see Ling Xiao, to see the divine sword sect leader? Of the divine sword sect disciples who followed him and Ling Wuhen, the youngest was only 12 years old and the oldest was only 18 years old. They only came to see the world. However, the moment they arrived at the Sword King sect, a tragedy happened. Although he and Ling Wuhen fought with all their might, there were too many enemies and they were too strong. They were simply powerless. They could only watch as the young disciples were killed one by one in front of them. At that moment, he really wanted to die. He wanted to perish together with the Sword King sect. However, he was unable to fulfill such a small request because he was too weak. He was really too weak. In front of the Sword King sect's experts, he could only feel grief and despair. However, he was unable to do anything. He and Ling Wuhen survived, but they were forced to wear slave masks and thrown into the beast fighting arena to participate in the bloody battle. He originally thought that he would never be able to see the divine sword sex people again in this lifetime. He thought that he would continue to live in such a cowardly manner. However, Ling Xiao appeared. In his painful eyes, there was a trace of gentleness. Then he actually burst into tears. To be able to make a strong man cry like this, it can be seen how sad and unreconciled his heart is. Ah! Painful cries resounded throughout the cage. Dai Yuling, Lan Yu, and Lung Hao, who were outside, all felt waves of sorrow. The two girls could not help but cry as well. Humans were not plants and could not be emotionless. Even Ling Xiao could not help but want to cry when faced with such a scene. However, he knew that he could not cry. He did not have the qualifications to cry. From the day he became the Divine Sword sect leader, this sect was closely related to his fate. He wanted revenge. Even if he couldn't destroy the Sword King sect now, he would make the Sword King sect pay a heavy price. Good brother, you've suffered. Ling Xiao gently held Ling Yihong's head in his arms, and then gently patted his shoulder twice. I will avenge you. Whoever dares to touch the Divine Sword sect, I will destroy them. He let go of Ling Yihong and stood up. A surge of killing intent directly pierced through the cage. Boom! He flew out like an eagle and stood in the air above the beast fighting arena, overlooking the entire beast fighting arena. His eyes were blood red, as if they were dripping blood. People of the Sword King sect, come out and die. There was nothing to worry about. Ling Xiao only wanted to take revenge at this moment. Seeing his good brother become like that, and hearing that his own Divine Sword sect's disciples were massacred by the Sword King sect, his heart was bleeding. Perhaps he didn't have the strength to annihilate everyone in the Sword King sect, but he was confident that he could make the Sword King sect suffer for eternity, and everything would begin today, from this moment onwards. At this moment, Ling Wuhen, Ling Yihong, and the others also came out from inside. Seeing this scene, Wu Zonglian seemed to understand something, and his brows were tightly knitted together. Ha ha ha! This Yuehua school bastard must have lost his mind, right? He actually dares to face the Sword King sect head-on? There were actually many people from the Sword King sect present. In addition to the few people sitting in front, there were many staff members sent by the Sword King sect to be in charge of the operation of the beast fighting arena. These people's strength was uneven, but their arrogant attitude was as if they were carved out of the same mold. The one who spoke was one of these people. He didn't lose his mind. It seems that it has something to do with those two slaves. No wonder the Yuehua school has always been the last in the 12 sects. How good can it be to hang out with these useless slaves all day long? Ha ha ha! Laughter filled the entire beast fighting arena. It even covered up the battle that was still ongoing. Although the Demon Castle City's great castle lord was stronger than the 3 half-step heavenly venerables, with 50% strength, it was still not possible for him to end the battle immediately. However, Ling Xiao didn't expect him to end the battle so quickly. It would be enough as long as he could stall the 3 half-step heavenly venerables. It would be best if the Yuehua school's disciples were all thrown into the beast fighting arena as slaves, ha ha ha. An old man and a young man walked in from outside the beast fighting arena. The old man was very strong, and the young man wasn't weak either. The old man and the young man had heard the news and rushed over, but they didn't expect to see a good show. The young man's voice was particularly ear-piercing among the laughter of the crowd. Qin Tian, Brother Ling, that's the guy. He's the guy who killed the Divine Sword sect's disciples and seriously injured me and Second Master Ling before throwing us here. Ling Yihong suddenly shouted when he saw the young man. Ling Zhao's gaze turned to the complacent young man. This person was at the 9th level of the Transcendent Realm. It could be said that he was the strongest person below the half-step Heavenly Venerables. He should have a place among the Sword King sect's core disciples, perhaps second only to Wu Zonglian. However, no matter who he was, he would die today. Ling Zhao's eyes were filled with cold killing intent, like 2 sharp swords that directly pierced through Qin Tian's body. Who told you to do this? His voice was emotionless, as if it was a question from hell. Idiot! Does this young master need someone to order him around? It's just that I was in a bad mood that day and happened to meet them, so I just wanted to pass the time. Qin Tian felt the threat of death in his heart. There was a terrifying chill that almost forced him to kneel. However, he was still ranked 4th among the Sword King sect's 10 core disciples, and was also one of the participants in this 4-sect martial competition. He wasn't as useless as Wu Zue, The roar was an answer, but at the same time, it was also a way to boost his courage. He was furious because he was actually frightened by the gaze of a disciple from a low-level sect. This was simply a great humiliation. Very good. I'm in a bad mood right now, so I'll vent my anger on you. Suddenly, Ling Xiao's figure turned into a ray of light and shot towards Qin Tian. The old man beside Qin Tian tried to stop him, but he was still a step too late. Bang! The ray of light struck Qin Tian's body, sending him flying like a kite with a broken string. A trail of fresh blood drew a bloody parabola. This kick was for Ling Wuhan. He is my benefactor and my guide. You shouldn't have hurt him. Qin Tian didn't even have time to speak. Bang! Another kick flew up. His body that was about to land on the ground was kicked up again and thrown high into the sky. Fresh blood spurted out once again, and even fragments of his internal organs fell. The old man that came with Qin Tian tried his best to catch Ling Xiao's figure, trying to save Qin Tian. However, it was useless. In front of Ling Xiao's cloud dragon divine travel, the old man's movement technique was like a child's trick, completely meaningless. Chapter 667. This kick is for my good brother Ling Yihang. He's my only good brother in Tianfeng City, but you've turned him into something that's neither human nor ghost. You deserve to die. Bang! After saying that, Ling Xiao kicked him again. This time, Qin Tian's body fell to the ground from midair. This kick is for the dead disciples of the Divine Sword Sect. I come from Tianfeng City, and the Divine Sword Sect is my home. They are my family. If you kill them, I'll kill you. Finally, Ling Xiao stomped on Qin Tian's chest. Qin Tian was on the verge of death. He was the fourth-ranked core disciple of the Sword King sect, yet he was being kicked around by Ling Xiao like a rubber ball. He didn't even have the chance to resist. This left the spectators sitting in the stands completely dumbfounded. Little bastard, do you know who he is? If you hurt him, the entire Yuehua school will have to pay with their lives. The old man finally caught sight of Ling Xiao's figure because Ling Xiao had stopped. Unfortunately, in the next moment, a blue figure blocked in front of him. It was Lan Yu. Lan Yu was a half-step celestial venerate. Although she couldn't suppress the old man, she was still evenly matched. This old man was at most a half-step celestial venerate with 50% of his strength, which was comparable to the strength of the previous 3 people. I'm not interested in knowing who he is. You said that if I kill him, the entire Yuehua school will have to die with him? Do you know that if you kill the people of the Divine Sword Sect and hurt my benefactor and friend, the entire Sword King sect will have to die with him? Ling Xiao increased the strength of his kick. He guessed that Qin Tian's ribs would be broken one by one. Do you regret it? Do you blame yourself? It's useless. Everything is useless. When you kill innocent people because of your selfish desires, you no longer have a chance to live. It was Jian Wuji who asked me to do it. Qin Tian finally squeezed out a sentence. Jian Wuji? Ling Xiao glanced at the crowd on the stage. His cold eyes and terrifying soul made these people tremble in fear. Jian Wuji is the young sect master of the Sword King sect, which means that he is ranked first among the top 10 core disciples. His strength is unfathomable. Someone finally answered Ling Xiao's question. So it's the young sect master of the Sword King sect. Why did he do that? Ling Xiao glared at Qin Tian and questioned. I don't know either. He just said that he didn't want to see the trash of the Divine Sword sect tarnish the noble Sword King sect. At this moment, Qin Tian really answered every question, not daring to disobey Ling Xiao at all. Is that so, the noble Sword King sect? Since it is so noble, then I will trample it under my feet forever. After he finished speaking, he twisted his leg fiercely. Kacha! Qin Tian, the dignified 4th-ranked core disciple of the Sword King sect, was actually trampled to death just like that. Countless people sucked in a breath of cold air. Wu Zhongyan's face was also somewhat pale. His heart was beating fast. Madman. He is simply a complete madman. This guy must not be provoked. Otherwise, the next one to die might be him. Little bastard, you really have to kill him. You actually have to kill him. Don't you know that the sect master of the Sword King sect is also surnamed Qin? The old man who was blocked by Lan Yu instantly released his true essence as if he had gone crazy. He actually took Lan Yu's palm and rushed towards Ling Xiao. Lan Yu's combat experience was still insufficient. She actually failed to block the old man. Just as she was about to give chase, Ling Xiao gestured for her to stop. Senior Sister Lan, go and guard the entrance of the Beast Battle Arena. Don't let anyone from the Sword King sect out. Today, I will wash the Beast Battle Arena with blood. Ling Xiao's voice was very calm without any emotion. He won't kill the innocent, but none of the Sword King sect's people here are innocent. As for those who were watching the show, he could let them go. He had no interest in killing them. The old man who came to the Beast Battle Arena with Qin Tian had already arrived in front of Ling Xiao. He furiously stabbed out with his sword, and the sword light stretched out to 4 or 5 meters long. Before the sword light arrived, one could already feel the pain on the skin. Ling Xiao took a deep breath, and the overflow rain sword instantly appeared in his hand. Then he stabbed out with the sword. The crimson light skyrocketed, and the terrible killing intent seemed to be substantial. Clang! The two swords collided. Ling Xiao's figure was violently pushed back, and a trace of blood slid down the corner of his mouth. After more than 10 steps, he stabilized his body. As expected of a half-step celestial master with 50% of his strength, the power of his attack is really fierce. That disciple of the Yuehua school is simply courting death by confronting him head-on. Humph, he is too conceited. Obviously, that female disciple is stronger. Don't talk so much. That person is ferocious. Be careful, or he will kill you. In the eyes of the spectators, Ling Xiao was obviously at a disadvantage in this collision. Not only was he sent flying, but he was also bleeding. However, the old man seemed to be completely fine. He squatted on the ground and checked Qin Tian's injuries. He is already a dead dog. Why are you wasting your time? Ling Xiao wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. There was no fear on his face. Instead, there was a hint of a smile. Is this person crazy? Yeah, he is clearly at a disadvantage, but he can still smile. I don't understand. The spectators indeed found it difficult to understand Ling Xiao's smile. Ling Xiao's smile was, of course, because he had met a good opponent. Only such an opponent could force him to tap into his potential and erupt with stronger combat strength. The old man slowly stood up. His eyes were cold and filled with a murderous aura. You are Ling Xiao, right? That's right. I have long heard of you. Recently, the rising star of Yuehua School. The old man said coldly, if you had not killed young Master Tian, you might have had a chance to live. But today you can only die. Unfortunately, I have not lived long enough. Qin Tian's father should be your Sword King sect leader, Qin Nanqing. It is the father's fault for not teaching. Not only will I kill Qin Tian, but I will also make Qin Nanqing pay with his life. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Ha! The old man could not help but laugh. You can't even block one of my attacks. The sect leader is 100 times stronger than me. You think you can kill him? You are overestimating yourself. Dream on. Elder Qin, don't talk nonsense with him. Kill him and use his body to make a human puppet. It will be stronger than that trash from the Divine Sword sect. This old man's surname was Qin, and he was an outer sect elder of the Sword King sect, other than Wu Zhongyan. No one else dared to speak to him in such a manner. Ha ha ha, young Master Wu is right. The sect leader will definitely like such a human puppet. As long as young Master Tian's soul is not destroyed, he can use the human puppet to resurrect. When Elder Chun heard Wu Zonglian's words, he could not help but laugh. Good idea, it is really a good idea. That's right. Once this matter is done, the sect leader will definitely reward you. Who knows? Maybe you will have the chance to break through to the celestial realm. At that time, you will no longer be an outer sect elder, but a true inner sect elder. Wu Zonglian was afraid of Ling Xiao, so he did not want Ling Xiao to live. Chapter 668. Wu Zonglian didn't want Ling Xiao to live. This was because he could feel that if Ling Xiao lived, their Sword King sect would definitely be in trouble in the 4-sect martial competition tomorrow. This person was simply a madman and a powerful one at that. He was capable of doing anything. Ling Xiao turned his head and glanced at Wu Zonglian. Are you in a hurry to die? Don't worry, I'll fulfill your wish later. He really didn't know what kind of expression the Sword King sect would have when 2 of their 5 participants were killed by Ling Xiao during the 4-sect martial competition tomorrow. Ling Xiao was really looking forward to it. You still want to kill my Sword King sect disciple? You won't have the chance. Elder Qin snorted coldly. The long sword in his hand trembled as he pierced towards Ling Xiao once again. Ling Xiao looked at Elder Qin as his body rapidly changed. He had already entered his human dragon form. Although his cultivation had increased, his combat strength had also increased. Facing a half-step Empyrean with 50% strength, it was still very difficult for him to win in his human form. Even if he won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. At that time, he wouldn't have the chance to deal with others. He was brave, but not impulsive. Ling Xiao's battle was always filled with calmness and wisdom. At the same time, the image of the ancient hell dragon appeared behind him. The sword in his right hand pierced out, but he suddenly retracted it. Elder Qin was stunned for a moment. He pointed his sword at Ling Xiao's left hand, and a terrifying dragon-shaped qi sword tore through the air. 9 Meridian Qi sword, Hell Dragon sword. Coupled with the ancient Hell Dragon martial soul, the Hell Dragon sword's power was even more terrifying. Elder Qin, who had already rushed out, couldn't dodge this attack. He had no choice but to circulate his true essence with all his might, causing the sword that was originally attacking Ling Xiao to collide with the Hell Dragon sword. Buzz! The 2 forces collided, but there was no explosion as expected. Instead, they entangled together, forming a huge energy ball between the 2. Fighting requires wisdom. You're too stupid. Ling Xiao's voice rang in the old man's ears. Before he could react to the situation, he suddenly saw Ling Xiao's eyes. A powerful will that could almost instantly pierce through his soul, directly pierce through his entire soul. Ah! Even though the half-step Heavenly Venerate only had 50% of his power, he still howled miserably in the face of this terrifying destructive intent. With his soul injured, his control over his power was greatly reduced. The huge energy ball that appeared between the 2 of them began to move towards Elder Qin. At this moment, Ling Xiao had already put away the overflow rain sword. He put his hands together, and the 9 meridian swords continuously gathered together, finally condensing into a huge sword. Then, Ling Xiao used the great sword as a racket and slapped the energy ball to help it move faster. I've already said that you're too stupid. A half-step Empyrean with 50% of your strength isn't weak. But unfortunately, you can't even display 70% of your strength. What a waste of such powerful strength. A dazzling light burst from Elder Chen's body like a brilliant firework. This was the combined power of the 2's moves. No matter how powerful Elder Chen was, he was powerless. Looking at Elder Chen's body that had been reduced to ashes, the entire beast battle arena fell into a dead silence. An early-stage Transcendent Realm cultivator had actually killed a half-step Empyrean with 50% of his strength so easily. How had he done it? Of course, Ling Xiao's cultivation was already at the peak of the Transcendent Realm, and in that attack, just now, he had used his full strength. It was just that there were no masters in the stands, so no one was able to see it. But even so, In the eyes of these people, a transcendent realm cultivator defeating a half-step Empyrean was completely incomprehensible. Jumping a minor realm to challenge someone was already extremely powerful, worthy of being called a genius. Ling Xiao had directly jumped an entire great realm. They even suspected that Ling Xiao might be able to surpass a super cultivation level in battle. This person's fighting style is really cunning. Yes, his strength is not as good as Elder Chen's, but he first pretended to be weak, then used his powerful spiritual energy to cause damage to his opponent's soul before finally delivering a fatal blow. Too cunning. It's not just cunning, that energy ball and the way he used his chi sword. Even if there was the slightest difference in true chi, he would have failed, but he actually succeeded. This level of control is simply terrifying. What's his name? Ling Xiao. So he's Ling Xiao? The Ling Xiao who killed Wang Xu when he was still an outer sect disciple? Yes, that's him. No wonder. Sword King sect provoked this Demon King. I'm afraid they'll never have a day of peace. It's time for someone to come out and teach Sword King sect a lesson. These years, Sword King sect has been very domineering in the sacred dynasty. Many people are angry, but don't dare to speak out. In the stands, there were those who hated Ling Xiao, and naturally there were those who supported Ling Xiao. No matter when, where, there would always be opposing forces. This place was no exception. Brother Ling, that Wu Zonglian is running. Suddenly, Ling Yihong's voice rang out. Ling Xiao slowly turned his head to look at Wu Zonglian, who was currently running out of the beast battle arena at an extremely fast speed. He can't run. Ling Xiao's ghostly figure instantly crossed dozens of feet and blocked Wu Zonglian's path. You just said that you want to turn me into a human puppet? You haven't done it yet. Why are you leaving? Ling Xiao's voice contained a bit of ridicule. Wu Zonglian looked at Ling Xiao nervously. He had never been so afraid of a person. Even if he encountered the Sword King sect's young sect master, Jian Wuji, he wouldn't be like this. This Ling Xiao was too ferocious, so ferocious that it made him completely lose the courage to resist. Suddenly, he shouted, "Whoever saves me will be rewarded with 2 jade grade martial arts and 100,000 mid-grade spirit stones. When there's a great reward, there will be a brave man." This saying was not joking. Hearing Wu Zonglian's words, many of the spectators who were originally watching on the sidelines were moved. That was 2 jade grade martial arts and 100,000 mid-grade spirit stones. It was absolutely worth a try. However, when they made up their minds and were just about to make a move, the aura of death spread out in front of them. Lung Hao and Dai Yuling made a move. A ray of sword light, hundreds of vines. The few spectators who were just about to make a move died miserably on the spot. "Haha, senior sister Yuling, I killed 4 people, one more than you." Dai Yuling shook her head and smiled bitterly. Unless it was a last resort, she was really unwilling to kill. However, if someone wanted to harm Ling Xiao, then she would definitely not show mercy. "Be careful. Don't let anyone disturb Ling Xiao." Lan Yu are reminded as she blocked the entrance of the beast battle arena. "Got it." Lung Hao and Dai Yuling nodded at the same time and became alert at the same time. At this time, Ling Wuheng and Ling Yihong had also recovered their battle strength. They also threw themselves into the battle with hatred, like 2 fierce beasts fighting with the disciples of the Sword King sect. Chapter 669. Wu Zonglian was in despair. No one could save him. He looked at Ling Xiao, who was right in front of him, took a deep breath, and said, "Ling Xiao, what are you trying to do? Do you really plan to completely fall out with the Sword King sect?" "Hee, at this time, you still say such stupid words. Do you think that after killing my people, you still want to be kind?" Ling Xiao approached step by step and asked with a smile, "I can help you plead for mercy in front of sect Master Chinanqing, and I can spare your life." Wu Zonglian said loudly, "Ha ha ha ha, what a joke. In the eyes of your Sword King sect, only your lives are important, and other people's lives are not? Ling Shao laughed out loud. You people from the Sword King sect are too self-righteous. I've already said it before, the Sword King sect doesn't need to continue existing. Qin Nanqing must die. He spared me? Don't you think that's ridiculous? Ling Shao, calm down. Isn't it just the lives of a few trash? I can give the Divine Sword sect a gold, ranked martial art, or even a jade, ranked martial art. I can also give them a large amount of spirit stones. This way, it should be enough compensation, right? It's just a few cheap lives. I think you should understand what's more beneficial to the Divine Sword sect. Wu Zonglian's back was covered in cold sweat, but until now he still did not understand what he had done wrong, and was still ordering people around with a high and mighty attitude. A few cheap lives? Ling Shao looked at Wu Zonglian with ridicule and said coldly, That's right, to you self-righteous idiots, it might just be a few cheap lives. But to me, it's my family. How could a mere martial art and spirit stones be enough to make up for the death of his loved ones? A life for a life, a debt for a debt. This was a matter of course. A person who could be sent away with just a few spirit stones and a few martial arts was an incompetent person, a coward. He, Ling Shao, would not be like that. After today, he and the Sword King sect would be like fire and water, and there would be no room for peaceful coexistence. The Sword King sect would definitely not let him, Ling Shao, off. And he, Ling Shao, would definitely destroy the Sword King sect. If he didn't destroy the Sword King sect, he would have let Ling Wuhan down. No, he would have let down those innocent disciples who had been killed. He and the Sword King sect would not rest until one of them was dead. No, you can't kill me. If you kill me, the Sword King sect will definitely grind your bones to dust. There is also the Divine Sword sect, Yuehua School. They will all be destroyed. Wu Zonglian roared and finally burst out with his strength. He had already reached a point where he could no longer retreat. He could only fight to the death. Unfortunately, in front of Ling Shao, all of this was futile. Pooh! A sword pierced Wu Zonglian's throat, and Ling Zhao's cold voice sounded in his ear. What a fool! I even killed Qin Tian. Why can't I kill you? You should leave first. Qin Nanqing, that old bastard, will soon meet you in the underground. There was no sympathy because Wu Zonglian deserved to die. Just now, when Ling Shao was at a disadvantage, this fellow actually instigated Elder Qin to turn Ling Shao into a human puppet. Just from this sentence alone, Wu Zonglian could not be separated from the matter of the Divine Sword sect. It was possible that Ling Yihang's current state was caused by Wu Zonglian. Towards animals, any cruel method was not excessive. Otherwise, they would only be even more arrogant and would only harm even more people. What a terrifying youth! What vicious methods! The Sword King sect has truly encountered a fiend. The remaining people in the stands all felt their hearts palpitate. They had come today to watch the Beast Fighting Arena Challenge, but they did not expect to see such a shocking scene. After killing Wu Zonglian, Ling Shao took away his storage ring and placed it together with Qin Tian and Elder Chen's storage ring. There was nothing special inside. Other than spirit stones, there were only basic gold rank martial arts. These did not have much meaning to him, but it was not bad to use them to strengthen the Divine Sword sect. Through this matter, it was clear that the Divine Sword sect was still too weak. They had to become stronger. Only then would no one dare to provoke them. In order to make the Divine Sword sect stronger, these resources were definitely not lacking. Ling Shao looked around and saw the 3 half-step heavenly venerables fighting with the great fort master of Jade Devil Castle. He revealed a sneer. After that, the celestial dipper flying sword flew out from behind him and pierced into the bodies of the 3 people at an absolutely strange and perfect angle. The 3 of them were already at a disadvantage. After being pierced by the flying sword, they immediately died miserably at the hands of the great fort master of Jade Devil Castle. As for the rest of the Sword King sect staff, not a single one was left alive. The entire beast fighting arena, except for those who were unrelated, had become a sea of blood. "Let's go." Ling Xiao called out to everyone, turned around, and left the beast fighting arena that reeked of blood. When the Demon King was enraged, the beast fighting arena was littered with corpses. This was the story that spread throughout the Sword King city the next day. If it was anyone else, after doing such a thing, they would have already left the Sword King sect in a hurry and hide as far away as possible. However, Ling Xiao did not do so. He only ordered Ling Wuhen and Ling Yihong to return to the Divine Sword sect that very night. He also told them to send a message to the entire Divine Sword sect to cultivate in seclusion and not take half a step out of the Divine Sword sect. After this incident, Ling Xiao felt that the Divine Sword sect's current situation was extremely awkward, although they were already very strong compared to those weak sections. However, compared to the 12 sects, they were still very weak. Since that was the case, they might as well cultivate in seclusion. In any case, with the sect protecting array, even if any of the 12 sects wanted to deal with the Divine Sword sect, they would not be able to succeed in a short period of time. As for training, it was even simpler. The Land of Dragons was in Long Chen's hands. The disciples of the Divine Sword sect could go to the Land of Dragons to train and train. After the dragon race matured, the Divine Sword sect could openly become the 13th sect of the Sacred Dynasty. They could even squeeze out a sect and become one of the 12 sects. Ling Wuhen and Ling Yihong's departure also allowed Ling Xiao to have no more worries. That night, he told Wu Xiang the whole story. After all, this matter might involve the Yuehua school. Wu Xiang only said one sentence: "Whoever wants to kill you will have to step over my dead body first." Since a Grotto Heaven realm expert had said so, Ling Xiao naturally had nothing to worry about. Although the Sword King sect was stronger than the Yuehua school, the strongest person was only a Grotto Heaven realm martial artist. There was really no need to be afraid. Even if he could not destroy the other party, at least he would not die. Before dawn, a group of people angrily rushed to the Yuehua school's temporary residence. Today was supposed to be the day of the Four Sects tournament. However, it was not time yet, but these people were all emitting cold, killing intent. It was obvious that they wanted to harm the Yuehua school. The person in the lead was a middle-aged woman wearing a fiery red robe. However, she looked very young and her skin was well maintained. The corners of her eyes revealed a strong sense of hatred. The people behind her were all inner sect disciples of the Sword King sect. One of them had messy hair, and his face could not be seen clearly. One could only faintly see the word prisoner carved on his face. Chapter 670. The death row prisoner with messy hair exuded a gloomy aura that made people shudder. It was as if he wasn't human, but a devil from the 9 Serenities continent. This guy's strength might be more powerful than the woman in red. "Why are the few of you so aggressive? What's the matter?" Chan Yue-ing, who had long sensed the danger, appeared at the door of the Yuehua school's temporary residence and looked at the group of people indifferently. "Tell Ling Xiao, Lan Yu, or Lung Hao and Dai Yuling to come out." The woman in red's attitude was very domineering and arrogant. She didn't give Chan Yue-ing any face at all. In fact, her cultivation wasn't as good as Chan Yue-ing's. The reason why she dared to act like this was because this was the Sword King sect and she was the inner elder of the Sword King sect and Wu Zonglian's master. When did the Sword King sect become so unruly? Do you think you can meet the people of our Yuehua school as you wish? Chan Yue-ing sneered. "Cut the crap. Those 4 people killed hundreds of our Sword King sect staff in the beast fighting arena yesterday. Among them were 2 core disciples. If it were you, would you take revenge for this?" The woman in red said furiously, "There's such a thing." Chan Yue-ing was stunned. She really didn't know that such a thing happened in the beast fighting arena. However, this Ling Xiao was too ruthless. He killed other people's core disciples in their territory. Wasn't this a slap in the face? Although the Sword King sect had always been very domineering and didn't give her any face. She definitely didn't have a good impression of the Sword King sect. However, this matter involved too many people, and she didn't dare to make a decision on her own. Therefore, after thinking about it, she called Tantai Lingzi. Tantai, go and call Ling Xiao and the others over. What happened yesterday must be explained clearly in person. Don't let the Sword King sect and Yuehua school have any animosity between them. After all, Chan Yueying was used to being last and being bullied by the Sword King sect and Beast King Palace. When faced with such a matter, the first thing she thought of was not to argue with them, but to apologize first. Yes, master. Although Tantai Lingzi didn't know what was going on, she didn't dare to disobey Chan Yueying. There's no need for that. We'll look for them ourselves. Who knows if you'll call them or tell them to escape. The woman in red didn't take Chan Yueying seriously at all and directly barged into Yuehua School's temporary residence. Chan Yueying hesitated for a moment, but still stepped forward to stop him. She was much stronger than the woman in red. Once she tried to stop her, the woman in red would not be able to do anything. There's no need to harm our friendship over such a small matter. If you're worried, you can send a few people to follow my disciple. Chan Yueying's attitude was still very humble. No matter what, she didn't want to have a direct conflict with the Sword King sect because she really didn't have the guts or the courage. You three, go with her. Even though the woman in red was overbearing, this time she came to find trouble with Ling Xiao and the others, not to become enemies with Yuehua School. What's more, she knew that she wasn't Chan Yueying's opponent, so she took a step back. The three transcendent realm inner disciples of the Sword King sect followed Tantai Lingzi into the temporary residence to find Ling Xiao. At this time, Ling Xiao was cultivating in his room. Yesterday's battle had been very satisfying. At the same time, he had also comprehended a lot of things that he needed time to digest. However, at this moment, noisy footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. He couldn't help but frown and slowly opened his eyes. Ling Xiao, get out here. This roar was from an unfamiliar voice. It didn't put Ling Xiao in its eyes at all. It was as if it was calling out to its grandson. It was very rude. Asterisk bang. Asterisk the next moment, the door was kicked open and the fan on the door almost flew out. This kind of behavior would be regarded as an absolute provocation no matter where it was. The disciples of the Sword King sect seemed to think that this was the Sword King sect. Was that why they could be so arrogant? 3 people walked in from outside the door. Tantai Lingzi wisely chose to stay outside the door. She knew Ling Xiao's temper very well. Entering the room in this way at this time was tantamount to courting death. You're Ling Xiao. One of them looked at Ling Xiao contemptuously and asked, Get out. Ling Xiao didn't answer. Instead, he shouted coldly, What? The 3 of them looked at each other, wondering if this kid was stupid. Even at this time, he still dared to be so arrogant. Do you want to get out yourselves, or do you want me to help you? Ling Xiao still sat there without moving and asked the 3 of them indifferently, You dog, how dare you talk to the 3 of us like that? Don't forget that this is the Sword King sect, not your Yuehua school. How dare you go to the Animal Fighting Coliseum and not give us face? You really don't know what's good for you. Although the 3 of them didn't have the same cultivation as Ling Xiao, their tempers were worse than Ling Xiao's. Their arrogance was as if they didn't put anyone in Yuehua school in their eyes. Of course, they had a reason to do so. This time, the person who brought them here was an inner elder of the Sword King sect. With such a powerful backer, how could they be afraid of a mere Ling Xiao? Get out. Ling Xiao was too lazy to talk nonsense. With a wave of his hand, a powerful true origin gushed out. The 3 of them walked in, but in the end they flew out. Junior Brotherling, the inner elder of the Sword King sect, brought people here to look for you. It's better not to have a direct confrontation with them. Some things can be solved with a clear explanation. Tantai Lingzi frowned outside the door. She was the same as her master, a typical bully. Explain what? Ling Xiao asked rhetorically. It's about the animal fighting coliseum. Someone must have framed us to deliberately destroy our relationship with the Sword King sect. Tantai Lingzi said. There's no framing. I did the animal fighting coliseum. Humph, I haven't even questioned them, but they came here instead. Ling Xiao snorted coldly. What, you really did it? Tantai Lingzi was shocked. She didn't expect Ling Xiao to be so bold as to directly oppose the Sword King sect. He was simply crazy. Do you know the consequences of doing this? The Sword King sect may launch an attack on our Yuehua school. When that time comes, the Yuehua school may completely disappear from the Sky Dragon continent. Tantai Lingzi said loudly. Is that so? You didn't do that, but for so many years, the number of Yuehua school's disciples who died for no reason at the hands of the Sword King sect is at least 1,000, if not tens of thousands. The territories that belong to the Yuehua school have been annexed by the Sword King sect are innumerable. Ling Xiao said coldly, others have already bullied you at your doorstep, and you still admit defeat. You're really useless. He slowly stood up and walked out of the door. He glanced disdainfully at Tantai Lingzi, then stared at the 3 inner disciples of the Sword King sect, who were lying on the ground and groaning. His eyes were filled with coldness. What do you want? Chapter 672. This Chang Yueying was really interesting. The enemy was bullying her, but she didn't think about how to resist. Instead, she thought about how to hand over her own sect's disciple to quench the flames. She was too spineless. Novel. La Tisk Tisk, the head of the Yuehua School's law enforcement hall, is really trash. He can't even control a disciple. The red-clothed woman glanced at Chang Yueying and laughed mockingly. Hearing this, Chang Yueying's face flushed red. She used to be the sect master of the Yuehua School, but now she was so embarrassed. It was all Ling Xiao's fault. Her gaze suddenly turned cold. In front of so many people, Ling Xiao really didn't give her face and embarrassed her. She couldn't tolerate this. However, she didn't think that there was anything wrong with her approach. Ling Xiao, I'll ask you one last time. Where did you put the 2 slaves you brought back? Chang Yueying tried her best to suppress her anger. She didn't dare to get angry at the red-clothed elder, but she dared to show off in front of Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao looked at Chang Yueying and shook his head gently. Then he said, with a mocking smile, when the Moonlight Heavenly Maiden appeared, she actually made you the head of the law enforcement hall. Now it seems that this was a mistake. As the head of the Yuehua School's law enforcement hall, you followed the lead of a mere one-line sky martial artist from the Sword King sect. You were like a grandson in front of her, but you shouted at your own sect's disciple and showed off. This is simply a disgrace to the Yuehua School. No wonder the Yuehua School was laughed at in the Sacred Dynasty. It's because of a sect master like you. I feel disgusted. His words not only surprised the people from the Sword King sect, but even Chang Yueying and Chang Yueli were stunned. Who would have thought that he would actually dare to say such a thing in front of everyone? Shut up. Chang Yueying's entire body was trembling. Clearly, she was already on the verge of exploding. Ling Xiao had no intention of stopping. He looked at Chang Yueying with a smile and continued, If you really have the ability, if you really are powerful, why don't you kill these scumbags from the Sword King sect first, and let everyone see the true power of the head of the Yuehua School's law enforcement hall? If you can't do it, then shut your mouth and obediently be a coward. Don't flaunt your prowess in front of me and make a scene like a dog without a leash. Bastard, I'll kill you. Terrifying true essence rose from Chang Yueying's body. The aura of the peak of the heaven realm caused the red-clothed woman and the rest of the people from the Sword King sect to jump in fright and retreat one after another. Within a radius of a few hundred meters, the murderous aura rose, as if creating an ocean of murderous aura. At this moment, Chang Yueying had already lost her rationality. Ling Xiao dared to insult her in front of so many people. He must die. Death was not enough to quell her anger. Kill me? Humph, that's all you have. Trying to show off in front of me. A transcendent realm, cultivator. Ling Xiao looked at Chang Yueying indifferently. The other party's murderous aura had no effect on him. I'm so angry. Let me teach this stupid woman a lesson. At this moment, the Moonlight Fairy spirit avatar couldn't stand it anymore. Chang Yueying's stupidity, cowardice, and shamelessness made the Moonlight Fairy spirit avatar almost explode. Don't worry, she won't dare to make a move. With Wu Xiang here, she won't have the guts. There's no need for internal strife now. Ling Xiao had no intention of letting the spirit avatar make a move. He looked at Chang Yueying and said, "If you really dare to make a move, I'll admire you, coward woman." Chang Yueying really didn't dare to make a move. Don't be fooled by her threatening appearance. It was just to scare people. If she really had the guts, she wouldn't have not dared to go to the Sword King sect for so many years to seek justice for the dead Yuehua school disciples. She looked at Wu Xiang, who was standing beside Ling Xiao, with an extremely ugly expression. The aura she released was very strong, but she didn't dare to make a move, because she was afraid of Wu Xiang, just like how she was afraid of the Sword King sect. Sai, you waste. In the end, you still don't dare to attack. Ling Xiao glanced at Chang Yueying indifferently. This woman was really disappointing. Facing someone stronger than her, she didn't even have the courage to resist. She was too cowardly. Since you don't dare to attack, then scram to the side. Don't stand there and make a fool of yourself. Ling Xiao said coldly, then bypassed Chang Yueying, looked at the woman in red and asked, "Are you here for me?" "That's right." The woman in red looked at Ling Xiao and mocked. "We were originally here for you, but we didn't expect to see a good show." "Is that so? You'll see a better show later, and you'll be participating in it," Ling Xiao said indifferently. "Little bastard, you're really good at talking. Today I'll tear your mouth apart," the woman in red said angrily. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? I've already come out. Aren't you going to make a move? I can tell you clearly that I killed Wu Zonglian. Qin Tian too." Ling Xiao's voice was indifferent and calm, as if he didn't care about the furious Sword King sect at all. This kind of confidence made the hearts of the disciples of the Sword King sect pound. They didn't know where this kid's confidence came from. The woman in red sneered. If the Yuehua school was united, she might be afraid. But from the situation just now, this kid named Ling Xiao seemed to have a bad relationship with Chang Yueying. In that case, Chang Yueying and Chang Yueli wouldn't help. As for Golden Light, Heavenly Venerable, the death row prisoners she brought were enough to deal with him. As for the new sect master of the Yuehua school, Wu Xiang, she didn't put him in her eyes at all. He was just a nobody. Maybe he was pushed out by the Yuehua school as a shield. Catch him. Remember, I want him alive. I want this kid to kneel in front of my disciples' grave and kowtow. The woman in red waved her hand to the people behind her and said coldly. Immediately, 5 people rushed out from behind the woman in red. All of them were 9th Order Transcendent Realm, Invincible Realm cultivators. From this point alone, it could be seen that the comprehensive strength of the Sword King sect was much stronger than that of the Yuehua school. If they were in the Yuehua school, cultivators with this kind of strength could definitely enter the top 5 of the core disciples. At least in terms of cultivation, they were strong enough. But in the Sword King sect, they were only the best of the best among the inner disciples. Seeing these 5 people rush out, Ling Xiao shook his hand slightly, and qi swords appeared on his fingertips. His eyes were calm, and he had no intention of backing down. With cultivators of this level, not to mention 5, even if there were 50 of them, Ling Xiao wouldn't be afraid. So. 5 qi swords flew out in a row. The 5 top disciples of the Sword King sect didn't even have time to display their strength before they felt a chill in their throats. Then their consciousness gradually faded and hot blood flowed out from their necks. Dong, 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 dong. 5 people. 5 lives. 5 corpses. Chapter 673. It was as if the 5 of them had taken the initiative to send themselves to their deaths. How terrifying! The disciples of the Sword King's sect were terrified. 5 invincible 9th layer, transcendent realm cultivators had died at the hands of Ling Xiao in a single move. No wonder Ling Xiao was so calm. This guy's strength was actually so terrifying. You've been hiding your strength. The woman in red shouted sharply. Nonsense! There's no need for me to use my full strength to deal with a few pieces of trash. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Elder Hongi, you should be an inner elder of the Sword King sect, right? Let me give you a piece of advice. You'd better do it yourself. Otherwise, I'll kill as many of you as you come today, unless you choose to retreat. The status of every sect was paved with corpses and blood. The Sword King sect was no exception. It was precisely because the Sword King sect was strong enough that even if they killed people from other sects, no one would dare to cause trouble for them. This was strength. Ling Xiao was just using the Sword King sect's method to deal with the Sword King sect. It was that simple. Ling Xiao's words were so cold that the disciples of the Sword King sect couldn't help but shudder. All of a sudden, they realized that they had provoked a madman. If there was no one to protect them, any one of them would die if they met Ling Xiao. Ha 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 ha, with just you. The elder Hong Yi laughed crazily. She couldn't hold back anymore and wanted to do it herself. This was because she was very clear about the strength that Ling Xiao had displayed. Unless the first and second ranked core disciples of the Sword King sect made a move, no other disciple would be a match for him. Originally, she was worried that if she took action, it would cause Yuehua School to resist. But now there was no other way. If she didn't take action, they would really have to retreat. With just me. Ling Xiao nodded and smiled. This smile was full of confidence and also a bit of ridicule. After speaking, Ling Xiao suddenly moved and the sword in his hand flashed, turning the 3 Sword King sect disciples who were kneeling in front of his room into 3 cold corpses. Bastard! The red-clothed elder shouted and pounced on Ling Xiao. At this moment, she no longer cared about face. Even if she was cursed for being shameless, she had no choice but to act, using her heaven realm cultivation to deal with a transcendent realm cultivator. Ha ha ha! Since we're both inner sect elders, why don't we exchange some blows? Golden Light, Sky Master laughed and joined the battle. His palms flashed with golden light and blocked the red-robed elder, making it impossible for the red-robed elder to get close to Ling Xiao. You bastard! Hurry up and kill that brat! The red-clothed elder knew that she would not be able to break free from Golden Light, Heavenly Sovereign, in a short period of time. She had no choice but to shout at the condemned prisoner. That death row prisoner's strength was extremely powerful. Just by looking at his cultivation, he was actually not far off from Chong Yueying, reaching the 9th firmament heaven realm. The condemned prisoner roared, and like a wild beast, he instantly appeared beside Ling Xiao. At this time, the disciples of the Sword King sect opened their mouths and were ready to cheer because they knew that Ling Xiao was going to die. Facing such a sudden and powerful attack, he would definitely die. But before they could shout, Wu Xiang also joined the battle. With just one sword strike, the condemned prisoner was beheaded and fell to the ground like a dead dog. Good. The disciples of the Sword King sect shouted excitedly. They were not happy because Wu Xiang killed the condemned prisoner, but because their action of cheering was delayed. Their cheers were originally for the condemned prisoner, waiting for the condemned prisoner to shout after he killed Ling Xiao. But who knew that Wu Xiang would appear halfway and kill the condemned prisoner in an instant? You don't have to be so polite. Wu Xiang responded very mischievously, making the disciples of the Sword King sect so angry that they felt like vomiting blood. But Wu Xiang's might made them completely frightened. He actually killed the most powerful one among them with one move. Was there still any way to fight this battle? Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ling Xiao did not show any mercy. He was like a fierce tiger rushing into a flock of sheep, the energy sword in his hand shooting out unceasingly. Each energy sword could kill a disciple of the Sword King sect. Blood splattered everywhere. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The people of the Sword King sect, who originally came aggressively to denounce Ling Xiao, instead became the target of Ling Xiao's revenge. One by one, they died tragically under his sword. Just like what Ling Xiao said, if they did not leave, then they would all die here. There was no need to leave. He had no intention of being lenient at all. When the disciples of the Sword King sect saw this scene of complete slaughter, each and every one of them trembled with fear. They began to desperately shout and flee for their lives. Some even took out life-saving magic treasures to seek the support of powerhouses. However, it was useless. Ling Xiao used an array formation to conceal this place last night. No one could detect the battle here. Therefore, this group of people from the Sword King sect who came to denounce Ling Xiao would not be able to leave this place alive. What they shouted was not a cowardly servant who was respectful to them, but a demon who wanted to take their lives. While fighting, the red-robed elder turned around to take a look, but he almost spat out blood. The people she brought were killed one by Ling Xiao, but she did not even have the chance to save them. She was a sinner of the Sword King sect. These people were almost all the inner disciples of the Sword King sect, but they were killed one by one. What did this mean? The red-clothed elder did not dare to think about it. Once a sect lost its inner disciples, it was equivalent to having no future. This sect was basically equivalent to collapsing. Once the upper echelons reached the limit of their lifespan, this sect would also disperse. No. The red-clothed elder suddenly shouted and tried to pounce on Ling Xiao, but she was hit by golden light, Heavenly Master's palm on the back. She spat out blood and was seriously injured. She lay on the ground like a dead dog while Ling Xiao stood in front of her. The Sword King sect's heritage is truly impressive. They actually have more than 500 inner disciples, and among these inner disciples, more than 100 have reached the 9th layer of the transcendent realm. If these people had been left alive, they would have been a threat to our Yuehua school. Unfortunately, they have all become corpses now. Blood dripped from the overflowing rain sword in Ling Xiao's hand. There was a hint of mockery on his face. Aren't you very good at killing innocent people? Didn't you come to denounce us? Then I'll give you a big gift. You'll regret it. You'll regret it. The red-clothed elder lay on the ground and glared at Ling Xiao, as if she wanted to kill Ling Xiao with her gaze. I, Ling Xiao, never regret what I do. I've heard such words many times. In the beast battle arena, Qun Tian and Wu Zongin said similar words, but they died. Now you've said the same thing. What do you think will happen? Aren't you very impressive? What do you look like now? You're lying there like a dead dog. Are you still an inner sect elder? Ling Xiao looked at the red-clothed elder at his feet and said coldly, Chapter 674. A dignified Sword King sect's inner sect elder. Unfortunately, in front of me, you're still like a dead dog. Let me tell you the truth. It's not that I don't have retribution, but it's not the time yet. Your Sword King sect once massacred the disciples of other sects, thinking that nothing would happen. La today, retribution has come. Since yesterday, when I saw my 2 friends being tortured by you in the beast fighting arena, I've already made up my mind. I'll kill whoever I meet from your Sword King sect. There won't be any fish that escapes the net. Ling Xiao's words were cold and cruel. This made Chang Yueying, Tantai Lingzi, and even Chang Yueli twitch uncontrollably. This brat was too terrifying. Just you? I'm afraid you don't have the strength. The red-clothed elder sneered. That's right, I don't have the strength now. But if 1 year isn't enough, then 2 years. If 2 years isn't enough, then 3 years. As long as I, Ling Shao, am here, your Sword King sect will never have a day of peace." The red-clothed elder's heart trembled fiercely. She absolutely believed Ling Zhao's words because this person was a madman. She brought so many people, but they were all killed by this brat. She originally thought that this would be a very easy interrogation, but the final result was that she couldn't kill a single person, and her own people were basically all dead. Lamentable, lamentable, pitiful, shameful. Suddenly, the red-clothed elder's eyes flickered with a strange and decisive red color. She suddenly used all her strength to leap up from the ground. A red light suddenly appeared in her hand. It was actually a snake-shaped sword. As it shook, it transformed into countless shadows. Illusory fog. The sword's name was Dense Fog Sword. This was a sword with fog attribute and immortal-grade treasure. In addition to doubling the battle prowess of a heaven tier, it also came with a special skill, and this skill's name was Illusory Fog. At that moment, the red-clothed elder's figure seemed to disappear. Only dense killing intent pervaded Ling Zhao's surroundings. Strange skill. It was so close. Extremely fast speed. Ordinary people couldn't dodge at all. However, Ling Zhao wasn't an ordinary person. He would never underestimate any of his enemies. Therefore, even though the red-clothed elder was already lying on the ground, unable to move, he still vigilantly released his true essence ball and was prepared to deal with this woman's sneak attack at any time. The moment the red-robed elder's shoulder trembled slightly, Ling Zhao had already moved. Cloud Dragon Divine Journey, Illusion Array. His figure suddenly disappeared like a dream before the red-clothed elder's eyes. However, the sneak attack of an expert in the celestial realm, even if he was seriously injured, was still too terrifying. Ling Zhao still felt the pain of being touched on his neck. However, his powerful defense allowed him to remain unharmed. After all, he had dodged 80% of the attack's power. The remaining 20% was easily blocked by Ling Zhao's heavenly dragon golden body and the tortoise-shell, heart-protecting mirror. "Little bastard, just you wait. I will definitely report this to the sect leader. Your Yuehua school is finished." In the fog, a voice quickly faded away. It turned out that the red-clothed elder's attack on Ling Zhao was just a diversion. Her real goal was to escape. "You want to escape after acting tough." The cold voice came from Wu Xiang. When the red-clothed elder launched a sneak attack just now, he was unable to save Ling Zhao in time. Fortunately, Ling Zhao reacted in time. Otherwise, he would really regret it for the rest of his life. At this moment, he was full of anger towards the red-clothed woman. "Leave your worthless life behind." When the voice sounded, his body had already moved out. His speed was too fast. In addition, the fog had yet to recede, so no one saw how he moved. However, when the fog dissipated, he had already thrown a cold corpse at his feet. It was the red-clothed woman. A dignified inner sect elder of the Sword King sect was killed just like that. "Wu Xiang, you've gone too far. You're too protective of Ling Zhao. He killed so many disciples of the Sword King sect and an inner sect elder of the Sword King sect. Do you really think the Sword King sect will let this go?" Chang Yueli thought that the Moon Maiden and the Moonlight Maiden would not be able to suppress her outside the sect. As a Grotto Heaven Realm expert, she was even more powerful than Wu Xiang. Therefore, there was no need for her to be afraid of Wu Xiang. Naturally, his attitude was a bit more forceful. "Chang Yueli, don't forget that I'm now the sect master of the Yuehua school. How dare you speak to me like that?" Wu Xiang said coldly. "Humph, don't try to show off in front of me. I was just giving you face in the sect. Now you're still trying to show off? Do you really think that anyone will care about you?" Chang Yueli snorted coldly. "You'd better think about how to face Chen Nanqing's anger." "What? You're not going to do anything?" Wu Xiang asked. "What a joke. You and Ling Shao killed them. What does it have to do with me? Why should I help? Chang Yueli said disdainfully. That's right. I won't do anything either. Sect Master, you and Ling Xiao have made a big mistake this time. It's better for you to atone for your sins with your death. In this way, perhaps the Sword King sect will let our Yuehua school go. Chang Yueying also said. If that's the case, then go to hell. Before Wu Xiang could speak, Ling Xiao spoke first. Back then, the two of you were able to live because Her Highness the Moonlight Fairy felt that the two of you were still useful to the Yuehua school. She also thought that the two of you were related to the Moonlight Fairy by blood, so she didn't kill the two of you. Since we've already said this today, then there's no point for the two of you to live. Little bastard, I was afraid of you when we were in the sect. That wasn't because I was afraid of you, but because I was afraid of the Moonlight Fairy. But now, the Moonlight Fairy isn't by your side. I'll kill you first. Chang Yueli was furious. I'm right here. Why don't you do it? Ling Xiao looked at Chang Yueli with a smile that wasn't a smile. He couldn't take the initiative to attack because his spiritual avatar wouldn't help him kill Chang Yueli. However, if Chang Yueli came to kill him, then the situation would be different. His spiritual avatar would definitely attack Chang Yueli. Little bastard, do you really think that I won't dare to attack? Chang Yueli was more ruthless than Chang Yueying. She really attacked, and her speed was even faster than the red-clothed elder. Wu Xiang didn't stop her because he knew that Ling Xiao had the moonlight token on him. This was something that Ling Xiao told him personally. Regarding this matter, Ling Xiao thought about it for a long time. In the end, he still told Wu Xiang, because Wu Xiang was a good friend. If he didn't even have this little bit of trust in his friends, then he would be a failure. Chang Yueli was originally guarding against Wu Xiang, but when she realized that he didn't have any intention of interfering, she was overjoyed. She smashed the green walking stick in her hand towards Ling Xiao's head. Boom! As expected, Chang Yueli's body was sent flying. At the same time, a deep red wound appeared. How is this possible? Chang Yueli looked at Ling Xiao in horror. She was sure that the terrifying power that suddenly burst out from Ling Xiao's body didn't belong to Ling Xiao. It was an external power. Chapter 675. Now tell me, if the Sword King sect wants to kill the people from the Yuehua school, will you help? Ling Xiao asked Chang Yueli with a faint smile after defeating her in one move using his spiritual avatar. I'll help. Chang Yueli clenched her teeth. She finally understood what Ling Xiao was relying on. She didn't expect the Moonlight Goddess to choose a man as her successor, and it just had to be this brat. Chang Yueying also felt her body trembling slightly. Ling Xiao became even more mysterious and terrifying in her eyes. I'll help too. You two are smart. Now that the Yuehua school needs people, I'll let you two live. However, whether you can live well will depend on your performance. Ling Xiao coldly snorted and looked at Wu Xiang. Sect Master, we should go participate in the Four Sects tournament. We're still going to participate in the Four Sects tournament. Tantai Lingzi asked in surprise. Now that we and the Sword King sect are like fire and water, can we still continue with the Four Sects tournament? It's not up to us to decide. This year's Four Sects tournament is hosted by the Sword King sect. We'll know once we go. Ling Xiao was going to cause trouble. If the time was right, he wouldn't mind wiping out the Sword King sect today. There's no need to think too much. All these years, the Yuehua school has been bullied by the Sword King sect and the Beast King Palace. He's had enough. He'll definitely participate in the Four Sects tournament today. Wu Xiang nodded and led everyone to the Sword Pavilion where the Sword King sect was hosting the Four Sects tournament. The Sword King sect master, Chen Nanqing's room was in a mess. A few higher-ups of the Sword King sect were discussing with Chen Nanqing how to deal with the Yuehua school. Of course, they didn't know what happened at the Yuehua school's temporary encampment. Ling Shao had used a formation to shield himself and then destroyed the corpses. Those hundreds of people seemed to have evaporated into thin air. Even if the Sword King sect suspected the Yuehua school, they didn't have any evidence to prove that they did it. They were currently arguing about the beast fighting coliseum. Shut up. I already know about what happened at the bestial battle arena. My son, Qin Tian, also died there. If I don't take revenge for this, I won't be able to quell my anger. However, the 4-faction martial arts competition is just around the corner. I still have to give the Beast King Palace some face. After they leave, it won't be too late to make a move on Yuehua School. Chan Nanqing waved his hand and stopped the chaotic quarrel. All of you, go and prepare for the 4-sect martial competition, lest others say that our Sword King sect is stingy. The higher-ups had no choice but to retreat. At this moment, a person walked out from behind the screen. He looked very similar to the sea race that Ling Shao had seen before. Demon General, can we destroy Yuehua School first? Qin Nanqing's eyes flashed with intense killing intent. His son was killed by Ling Shao. It was impossible to say that he wasn't angry and anxious to take revenge. Of course, I have already set up an ambush on the path that Yuehua School must pass by on his way back. With the help of the Yuehua School's people, let alone Ling Shao, the Yuehua School will all die. The Sea Race Demon General chuckled. Thank you for your help, Demon General. As long as you are loyal to the Storm Legion, you will naturally benefit. Soon, not only Yuehua School, but even the Beast King Palace will be swallowed by your Sword King sect. The entire eastern region will be your Sword King sect's territory. The eastern region of the Sacred Dynasty was close to the sea and connected to the Storm Ocean. It was the only way for the Sea Race to enter the Sacred Dynasty. Therefore, this territory was very important. The Storm Legion had their reasons for choosing the Sword King sect as their target. After all, the Sword King sect was the strongest among the 3 eastern sections. Okay. Qin Nanqing's eyes shone with excitement. Although his son had died, he still had an even more outstanding adopted son. His name was Jian Wuji, and he was one of the 6 young masters of the Sacred Dynasty. The 6 young masters of the Sacred Dynasty were the 6 most outstanding geniuses of the Sacred Dynasty. They were all under the age of 20 and were half-step heavenly venerables. They were the absolute top existences among the transcendents. Although Rin Xingtian of the Yuehua School had reached the celestial realm, he was over 20 years old, so he was not included in the 6 young masters. Lan Yu was not qualified to be included. When the Yuehua School's group was about to arrive at the Sword Pavilion, a person blocked their way. Fellow Yuehua School colleagues, this one is Chao Yun. I am here to escort you to the Sword Pavilion. Chao Yun's cultivation was similar to Qin Tian's. Even his arrogant appearance was like a copy of Qin Tian's. The disciples of the Sword King sect are really arrogant. Wu Xiang and the other higher-ups of the Yuehua School naturally didn't want to talk nonsense with a disciple. Ling Shao also didn't want to talk to such arrogant people. Tantai Lingzi smiled and introduced Ling Shao, Lan Yu, Dayuling, and Lung Hao. Chao Yun smiled faintly and said, the Yuehua School actually sent 4 newcomers this time. I have some impression of Lan Yu. She was defeated by my senior sister Qinmeng in 1 move. Although he was smiling, there was a hint of disdain in his tone. Would he still be smiling if he knew what happened at the Yuehua School's temporary residence? The group followed Chao Yun to the Sword Pavilion. On the way, Tantai Lingzi asked curiously, Senior Brother Chao, what is your ranking among the core disciples of the Sword King sect? In fact, even if she didn't ask, Ling Shao could guess. This person was definitely not first or second because his strength was not as good as Wu Zonglian and Qin Tian's. Therefore, he was ranked 5th. Chao Yun smiled and said, my aptitude is dull, so I'm only ranked 5th. He was ranked 5th, and his cultivation was at the 9th level of the Transcendent Realm. Purely in terms of cultivation, he was higher than Lung Hao. Lung Hao was ranked third among the core disciples of the Yuehua school. Ranked fifth? I heard that Jian Wuji of the Sword King sect is one of the 6 young masters of the sacred dynasty. How strong is he? Ling Xiao asked casually. He had killed the 3rd and 4th core disciples of the Sword King sect with his own hands. Therefore, the only ones who could arouse his interest were the 1st and 2nd disciples. You think you're qualified to ask about senior brother Wuji's background? Chao Yin looked at Ling Xiao disdainfully. Tantai Lingzi hurriedly said, Senior brother Chao, don't be angry. We just admired senior brother Jian Wuji for a long time. That's why we asked. That's more like it. Chao Yin was very satisfied with Tantai Lingzi's respectful attitude. He then smiled and said, Senior brother Wuji is one of the 6 young masters of the sacred dynasty. He's not on the same level as us. Therefore, although he has a spot in the 4-sect martial competition, he won't participate. His cultivation has already reached the level of a half-step heavenly venerable with 80% of his strength. He even killed a half-step heavenly venerable with 90% of his strength and successfully escaped from the pursuit of a one-line sky cultivator. Moreover, he has already cultivated our sect's strongest sword art, the Sword King's sacred scripture. That is a rare jade grade martial art. Logically speaking, only those who have entered the heaven realm can cultivate it. However, Senior Brother Wuji has broken the precedent and become the only person in the Sword King sect who has cultivated the sacred scripture while in the half-step heavenly venerable realm. Chapter 676. When Chao Yin talked about Jian Wuji, his face was full of admiration, but when he looked at Ling Xiao and the others, his face was full of disdain. Novel, in his opinion, in the 12 sects, other than the other 5 young masters, no one else was qualified to challenge Jian Wuji. Even Ying Weiyao from the Beast King Palace was not qualified, let alone these clowns from the Yuehua school. I really didn't expect Jian Wuji to have cultivated the Sword King Sutra. This is going to be troublesome. Chang Yueying revealed a surprised expression. The Sword King Sutra was the same as the Yuehua school's Moonlight Sutra. They were both the sect's strongest martial arts. They were both divided into 3 parts, upper, middle, and lower. The most basic part of the first part was a precious jade martial art. In the Yuehua school, no one was able to successfully cultivate the first part of the Moonlight Sutra at the half-step, celestial, venerable realm. Even Chang Yueying, the flame deity, and Ren Xingtian could not do it. They only started cultivating after reaching the celestial, venerable realm. This Jian Wuji was too heaven-defying. The Sword King sect actually produced such a talent. One had to know that whether it was the Sword King Sutra or the Moonlight Sutra, they were not limited to the category of martial arts. This was because they included martial souls, inner force cultivation methods, martial skills, movement techniques, and so on. They could be considered a complete set of inheritances. Once he succeeded in cultivating it, he would become extremely powerful. Now, in the Yuehua school, no one was able to successfully cultivate the Moonlight Sutra. Even Chang Yueying gave up halfway. This was because it was really too difficult. As they talked, they unknowingly arrived at the Sword Pavilion. At this time, the upper echelons of the Sword King sect and the Beast King Palace, as well as the participating disciples, had already arrived. Because it was just a spar, it was not so rigid. The entire Sword Pavilion was decorated like a banquet. There were tea tables around, with tea and fruit plates on them. In the center was the arena for the spar. The upper echelons of the Beast King Palace and the Sword King sect were talking and laughing. When they saw the people from the Yuehua school arrive, they sneered. Everyone were late. Wu Xiang cupped his hands and then looked at the seats of the Yuehua school. He could not help but sneer in his heart. The Sword King sect really did not have the style of a large sect. The fruit plates arranged for the Yuehua school were all rotten. There were even insects. Everyone else had tea, but they only had plain water. Of the Sword King sect's hospitality. However, Wu Xiang did not mind. The Yuehua sect and the Sword King sect were like fire and water now. They might even go to war after the 4-sect tournament. The people from the 3 sects had a tacit understanding not to remind the divine sword sect. It was as if this sect did not exist at all. The Sword King sect knew what was going on. The Beast King Palace did not care at all. The Yuehua sect, on the other hand, knew the details. Everyone has come from afar. It's been hard on you. Please take a seat. Only one person from the Sword King sect stood up. Ling Zhao's eyes lit up when he saw this person. It's you. Junior brother, you know me? That person was stunned for a moment. Ling Xiao replied excitedly, I'm afraid senior brother has already forgotten about it, but I remember it very clearly. That day outside Sky Cloud City, if it wasn't for you who made a move to scare off the Beast King Palace's men, Sky Cloud City would have already been annihilated. Oh, it seems like there was such a thing. It's just a slight effort, not worth mentioning. That person smiled. I'm Jian Feng. May I know how to address you? Enough, Jian Feng. Don't forget your current status. You're just a servant disciple. What rights do you have to speak in front of so many people? Just as Ling Xiao was about to answer Jian Feng, a black-robed youth with a cold expression said coldly, I'm sorry, senior brother. I've said too much. Jian Feng's expression was ugly, but he still replied respectfully, Senior brother Jian Feng, I'm Ling Xiao. Some people don't know etiquette. What has it got to do with you when other people are talking? Ling Xiao didn't buy it at all. He still did what he was supposed to do. That black-robed youth's eyes suddenly widened as a terrifying murderous aura rushed towards Ling Xiao. Humph! How dare you offend senior brother Jianwuji? You must be tired of living. Chao Yun had already sat down and couldn't help but snort coldly. So you're Jianwuji. What bullshit, 6 young masters. I think you're just SOO. Ling Xiao didn't care about Jianwuji's murderous aura. Using this kind of unformed sword to deal with him was totally laughable. Presumptuous. Since when did Yuehua School's disciples not know the rules? The woman sitting beside Jianwuji suddenly stood up and shouted, Who the hell are you? What rules do I need to know? Ling Xiao asked coldly. I'm Chen Meng, the second core disciple of the Sword King sect. The rules are that Yuehua School's disciples must keep their mouths shut during the Trisect martial arts competition. Chen Meng said coldly. Who set the rules? No one set the rules. It's just that Yuehua School's disciples are too weak and don't have the qualifications to sit on the same level as our 2 sects, let alone talk. We're already giving you face by letting you sit here. You'd better keep your stinky mouth shut. Chen Meng said sternly. He strength? Very well. I'll make you shut your stinky mouth later. Ling Xiao sneered. Indeed, no matter where one was, strength spoke louder than words. If one's strength wasn't good enough, others wouldn't give you face and wouldn't take you seriously. You think you can do that? Chen Meng didn't take Ling Xiao seriously at all. Ling Xiao didn't want to waste any more time with her. He looked at Jian Feng and said, Senior brother, you're much stronger than this woman. How did you end up like this? Junior brother Ling, there's no need to ask. Jian Feng shook his head. There was a hint of sadness in his eyes as he silently retreated to the side. At this moment, Ing Wuya stood up and smiled. Since everyone is here, let's start the Trisect martial arts competition. Why don't we introduce ourselves? After he finished speaking, he briefly introduced the 5 disciples of the Beast King Palace. The first was Decepticons. He was a very tall and muscular man. He stood there like a giant statue and was estimated to be about 3 meters tall. The second was Ing Wuya. Ling Xiao had never heard of the third and fourth. One was Wang Lang and the other was Li Hu. The fifth was Shi Jiao. On the Sword King sect side, the first was Jianwuji. The second was Chen Meng. Due to the deaths of Wu Zonglian and Qin Tian, Chao Yun fell to third place. Adding the fact that most of the inner disciples had been killed, in the end, they did not even have a total of 5 people. Jian Feng made up the number and became the 4th. There were only 4 people in total. On the Yuehua school side, Lan Yu was naturally the leader. Lan Yu's cultivation was basically the same as Decepticons. They were both half-step heavenly venerables with 50% strength. Only Jian Wuji was the strongest. After all, he was one of the 6 young masters of the sacred dynasty. It wasn't strange for him to have such strength. If Jian Wuji really did make a move, then Ling Xiao was confident that he could defeat everyone except for him. Of course, Ling Xiao also had a way to deal with Jian Wuji. It was just that he didn't want to use his trump card unless it was absolutely necessary. Chapter 677 were the hosts of the 4-sect martial competition. Chao Yin, go ahead and spar with the other senior and junior brothers. Chen Nanqing said to Chao Yin after the 3 sects introduced their disciples. Disciple understands. Chao Yin smiled confidently and walked to the center of the sword pavilion. He was at the 9th level of the transcendent realm. In terms of cultivation, he was stronger than the 3rd-ranked core disciple of the Yuehua school and the Beast King Palace. But in the Sword King sect, he was only ranked 5th. If Chen Tian and Wu Zonglian hadn't died, he wouldn't have had a chance to fight. Everyone who wants to go first. Chao Yun stood there and looked at Leng Hao. Leng Hao was the 3rd-ranked disciple of the Yuehua school. His cultivation wasn't as high as Chao Yun's, so Chao Yun was more confident in winning. He could also give the Yuehua school a show of strength and help the sect vent their anger. Unfortunately, Leng Hao didn't look at him at all. He only whispered to Ling Xiao, who was beside him, about something. Chao Yun was very unhappy. The clowns of the Yuehua school actually dared to not give him face. Just as he was about to mock them, someone suddenly walked to the center of the field. Let me show Brother Chao's methods. The person who walked out was the 3rd-ranked core, disciple of the Beast King Palace, Wang Lang. His cultivation was on par with Chao Yun, and he looked very fierce. Fine. Chao Yun glanced at the people of the Yuehua school and sneered. You cowards, watch carefully how a real martial artist fights. Ridiculous. Ling Xiao glanced at Dai Yuling and said in a low voice, Senior Sister Dai Yuling, you don't have to give us face. Let's go up and cripple this brat later. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Dai Yuling smiled and nodded. She didn't feel embarrassed at all. It was obvious that she was very confident. While they were talking, the battle over there had already ended. Chao Yun really did have some tricks up his sleeve. Although Wang Lang wasn't bad, he was defeated in 2 moves by Chao Yun. With the same cultivation, Chao Yun was obviously stronger than Wang Lang. It wasn't unreasonable for this brat to be arrogant. Thank you for letting me win. Chao Yun cupped his fists towards Wang Lang. Wang Lang returned to his seat dejectedly. Senior brother, you can't do it. How did you lose after 2 moves? I'll go next. Li, who glanced at Wang Lang, feeling quite dissatisfied. He jumped onto the stage and said, Brother Chao, if you want to rest, you can stop for a while. If you don't want to rest, let's begin. Originally, after Chao Yun defeated Wang Lang, he wanted to deal with the people from Yuehua school, but he didn't expect Li Hu to come. He was rather displeased, so his attacks were even more ruthless than before. This Li Hu was really smarter than Wang Lang and also more cunning. Facing Chao Yun's attacks, although he was constantly retreating, he still managed to resist for 10 moves before being stabbed by Chao Yun's sword. I lost. Li Hu was extremely depressed. He just sat there and didn't say anything. The situation doesn't look good. This Chao Yun looks quite powerful. Is Rain Numinous really his match? Lan Yu looked at Ling Xiao worriedly and asked, Don't worry. The winner will definitely be decided within 10 moves. It's not that Chao Yun is too strong, but the 2 from Beast King Palace are too weak. They're just here to make up the numbers. The real strong ones on their side are Decepticons and Nguya. Even Shi Jiao is stronger than those two guys. In terms of eyesight, no one present was stronger than Ling Xiao. He had already seen through the strength of those people, so he arranged for Dai Yuling to fight. 2 rounds have passed. Chao Yin, you should take a break for the time being. Beast King Palace will be the host for the next round. Comparing notes was comparing notes. It was different from a real duel. Any rules could be discussed. Although Chao Yin felt that he had no problem, he had to listen to Qin Nanqing and return to his seat. Shi Jiao came to the stage and actually challenged Ling Xiao. If you want to challenge junior brother Ling, you'll have to go through me first. Dai Yuling slowly got up like a fairy of nature. Wherever she walked, flowers bloomed and even the plants became more vibrant. This was because of her martial soul and also because of the martial arts she cultivated. Fine, our cultivations are similar. I'll defeat you first and then challenge him. Shi Jiao did not object. Her cultivation was currently at the early stage of the transcendent realm. So was Dai Yuling's. It won't be that easy to defeat me. Dai Yuling chuckled. Is that so? Shi Jiao's eyes suddenly glowed green as the phantom of a snake appeared behind her. She and Shi Mei both possessed a snake martial spirit, but of a different species. Of course. Dai Yuling did not dare to show weakness, summoning the phantom of a gourd vine behind her. This vine looked a bit old, and many of its roots had turned yellow or even withered, leaving only the roots with some green. What kind of broken martial spirit is this? Shi Jiao glanced at her disdainfully. Wisteria 3 layered waves. Dai Yuling didn't explain anything and just smiled. 3 beautiful vines suddenly shot out from behind her and shot toward Shi Jiao. These vines were extended from the gourd vine martial spirit and seemed to have a life of their own, making them not to be underestimated. The pressure coming from these vines caused Shi Jiao's heart to tremble, and she felt as if her breathing had suddenly become heavy and difficult. She now understood that one could not judge a person's strength purely from their cultivation. Even more so, one could not judge the strength of a martial spirit from its appearance. This Dai Yuling is too strong. 1,000 poison, 10,000 snake hands. Shi Jiao displayed her strongest move, and the snake martial spirit phantom behind her flickered with a bright light. She then pushed her hands forward, and countless snake phantoms flew out and slammed into the 3 vines. Asterisk pa 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 pa. Asterisk a series of slapping sounds rang out, and the 3 vines seemed to have a life of their own as they quickly cleared away the snake phantoms. In almost an instant, not only were the snake phantoms completely destroyed, but they also left several wounds on Shi Jiao's body. What a terrifying martial spirit! What a shocking move! Did this woman obtain the inheritance of an immemorial martial spirit? It can't be wrong. Her martial spirit looks ordinary, but it's very powerful. In terms of level, it has reached the level of the out-of-body stage and is much stronger than Shi Jiao's. Yeah, Shi Jiao's martial spirit is only at the complete soul corporeal stage and has not reached the out-of-body stage yet. The strength of a martial spirit directly determines one's combat strength. Those sitting in the sword pavilion were all experts. Other than the participating disciples of the 3 sects, there were also the leaders of the 3 sections. They were all surprised to see the battle between Dai Yuling and Shi Jiao. Puff, puff, puff. 3 consecutive sounds were heard as the 3 vines pierced Shi Jiao in 3 different places. They were not fatal. After all, it was not a competition to take one's life. The Yuehua school did not need to provoke the Beast King Palace after offending the Sword King sect. Shi Jiao was knocked out of the battle circle and announced her defeat. The 5th place of the Yuehua school actually defeated the 5th place of the Beast King Palace. Today's trisect competition is really interesting. It's indeed a little surprising compared to the past. Qin Nanqing stroked his beard and looked at Chao Yin with a smile. Chao Yin, you have rested for a while. Go and test Dai Yuling's strength. Chapter 678. Dai Yuling's victory over Shi Jiao had set off a small climax in the Trisect tournament. After all, Yuehua School had always been at the bottom of the Trisect tournament. There had never been a case of a 5th place defeating a 5th place. It was even impossible for the 1st place to defeat the 3rd or 4th place. This was also why Yuehua School had been bullied and looked down upon by the other 2 sects for a long time. This girl must have obtained an ancient inheritance. Shi Jiao is no match for her at the same cultivation level. The higher-ups of the Sword King sect and the Beast King Palace quickly came to this conclusion. The 12 sects all had their own secret areas, just like Yuehua School's Moonlight Pagoda. However, there were very few people who could obtain an ancient inheritance. Sometimes there would be no one in thousands of years. Just like this time, there were a few in the 3 sects of the East. This was simply a miracle. The higher-ups of the 3 sects came to the conclusion that the mountain river martial soul had appeared. The human king's luck had returned to the Sky Dragon continent, causing the Sky Dragon continent's luck to become stronger. Among the martial soul inheritances, there were ordinary martial soul inheritances, primordial demon king inheritances, and human immortal inheritances. These inheritances were all divided into strong and weak ones. Ling Zhao's primordial hell, dragon martial soul, was considered the strongest inheritance in the Moonlight Pagoda. However, other than him, no one knew about it yet. Dai Yuling's primordial gourd vine martial soul inheritance was ranked 2nd. It was slightly stronger than Tantai Lingzi's Queen of Spiders martial soul inheritance. Yuehua School has really produced a talent this year. It's a pity that her cultivation is too weak. Otherwise, she might be able to wash away the shame of the Yuehua School. Chun Nanqing smiled and said, "Chao Yun, are you ready?" "Sect leader, I'm ready." "Very good. Then go and test this girl's skills. Remember to be merciful. Don't be too ruthless. Otherwise, such a beautiful girl will lose face." Chun Nanqing seemed to be concerned about Dai Yuling, but he was actually disdainful and contemptuous. Anyone who wasn't a fool could hear his mocking tone. Dai Yuling was very unhappy. Earlier, when she fought with Shi Jiao, she still hadn't exerted her full strength. But this time, when facing Chao Yin, she didn't intend to show mercy. Chao Yin was stronger than Shi Jiao, and not just by a little bit, but she still wanted to defeat her opponent beautifully. After entering the arena, Chao Yun casually cupped his hands, as though he was just doing his job. Then, with a tremble of his long sword, a cold light flashed, as though frost was condensed, slashing towards Dai Yuling. The power of that sword was indeed powerful. In fact, both Wang Lang and Li who were defeated by that sword. This time, Chao Yun had used this move right from the start. It was clear that he did not want to give Yuehua School any face. He wanted to completely defeat Dai Yuling in one move. Just from the name of the Sword King sect, one could tell that their sword techniques were the most powerful. Furthermore, the path of swordsmanship was unconventional. Normally, one would be strong in offense and weak in defense. Chao Yun was no exception. Facing this brazen attack, Dai Yuling revealed a cautious expression. Then, she drew a circle in the air with her hands. Green vine protection. The vines condensed into a huge shield, forming in front of her. Then, her true ether gushed out crazily to block Chao Yun's sudden attack. After all, there was a huge gap between her cultivation and Chao Yun's. She could only rely on the advantage of her martial soul to win. During the battle, there could not be the slightest mistake. Otherwise, she would really lose this battle. Crack! Sword light flashed, and the green vine barrier actually shattered, and huge cracks appeared on its surface. Dai Yuling took a few steps back, almost leaving the battle circle. There were also rules for this battle. There was a huge circle in the center of the sword pavilion. If one stepped out of it, it would be considered a loss. What a domineering attack! Is this the power of Sword Dao? The disciples of Beast King Palace could not help but exclaim. However, Yuehua School's side did not have any astonishment. They had seen stronger sword techniques. In terms of sword techniques, Chao Yun was not even worthy of carrying Ling Zhao's shoes. Dai Yuling, who was barely able to block Chao Yun's attack, became even more cautious. The two of them fought back and forth. In the blink of an eye, they had already exchanged more than 10 moves. During this process, Dai Yuling was always at a disadvantage, but she did not lose. She was not good at attacking or defending, but she was good at recovering. Therefore, a long battle was extremely advantageous to her. Unfortunately, the people of the Sword King sect did not know this. They all cheered for Chao Yun, as if this battle would end soon. Jian Wuji narrowed his eyes as he watched the battle. Dai Yuling's fighting style was very similar to someone he had met before. That person was from the number 1 sect of the Sacred Dynasty, the Heavenly King sect of the 12 sects. There was a super genius in the Heavenly King sect. At the age of 17, he had reached the cultivation of a half-step Empyrean with 90% of his strength. Not only that, this person was best at this kind of long-lasting attack. If one could not defeat him in a short period of time, then they would definitely lose to him. Among the 6 young masters of the Sacred Dynasty, this person was ranked first. He did not seem to have any special characteristics, but he was more powerful than anyone else. His name was rarely mentioned because this person was the holy son of the Sacred Dynasty, the legal successor of the Sacred King. There was no one else. Therefore, people called him the Holy Son. In the Sacred Dynasty, only those who could inherit the throne of the Sacred Emperor were called the Holy Son. The rest could only be called princes. Power, talent, strength, status, appearance, and so on. This Holy Son could be said to be a powerful existence that was doted on by thousands of people. Even Jian Wuji could not last more than 2 moves under his hands and suffered a crushing defeat. Dai Yuling's powerful ability to continue fighting made Jian Wuji think of the Holy Son. He could not help but frown. He was worried about the result of Chao Yun's battle. With his eyesight, the longer this battle dragged on, the more thoroughly Chao Yun would be defeated. Senior brother Ling, why do I feel that senior sister Yuling has been at a disadvantage? Do you want me to go up and teach that Chao Yun a lesson? Leng Hao went to Ling Zhao's side and said with a smile, Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Wait a moment. After Yuling's battle, it'll be your turn. If we're talking about victory or defeat, it's naturally Yuling's victory. Chao Yun's attacks are powerful enough, but he doesn't have enough stamina. Look at his current moves. They're starting to weaken. On the other hand, Yuling is getting braver as the battle goes on. Ling Xiao said with a smile, Wu Xiang, Chang Yueying, Chang Yueli, Heavenly Lord Goldenlight, and the others could all see this. In fact, Leng Hao could also see this. However, this kid was just like what Ling Xiao said. He wanted to go on stage, so he deliberately said that. At this moment, there was a sudden change in the battlefield. Wisteria 3 layered waves. Suddenly, Dai Yuling launched a killer move. Chao Yun did not have enough stamina. Just as he was about to condense another sword move, he was hit by 3 vines. The long sword in his hand fell to the ground, and he was sent flying out of the battlefield. Thank you for letting me win, Dai Yuling said with a smile. Although she was panting, this battle was still under her control. She had withstood the most dangerous stage at the beginning. As the battle progressed, it became easier and easier. Defeating Chao Yun was a matter of course. Chapter 679. Dai Yuling defeated Shi Jiao and Chao Yun consecutively, which made Yuehua School proud. However, Shi Jiao and Chao Yun were still not convinced, especially Chao Yun, who felt that he had underestimated his opponent and wanted to fight again. At this time, Leng Hao stood up and replaced Dai Yuling. He couldn't hold back any longer. After entering the arena, he defeated Chao Yun in just 10 moves. He was obviously much stronger than Dai Yuling. A genius was a genius. Although Leng Hao's cultivation was on par with Dai Yuling's, his comprehension was better than hers in all aspects. In fact, his martial soul was not inferior. He didn't obtain the immemorial martial soul inheritance in the Moonlight Pagoda, but he had awakened a martial soul that was not weaker than the immemorial martial soul. After that, he defeated Shi Jiao, Wang Lang, and Li Hu consecutively, completely establishing Yuehua School's dominance in the Trisect martial arts competition. At present, apart from Jian Wuji, only Qin Meng and Jian Feng had not entered the arena. Only Decepticons and Ingwea from Beast King Palace had not entered the arena. The rest of the people had been defeated by the two disciples of Yuehua School. It was a shame. Chen Nanqing's face was ugly. He glanced at Qin Meng and said coldly, "You go and exchange pointers with the disciples of Yuehua School." Chen Meng was a half-step heavenly master with 50% of her strength. She was very strong. Dai Yuling and Lung Hao were no match for her. Tantai Lingzi also didn't dare to challenge her rashly. Therefore, only Ling Xiao and Lan Yu could deal with the Yuehua School. Ling Xiao was about to stand up, but Lan Yu beat him to it. "Junior brotherling, let me go and practice. After all, it's hard to find an opponent with the same cultivation level." "Okay, senior sister, be careful. Qin Meng is not easy to deal with." Ling Xiao reminded her and sat back down. "Don't you think that Ling Xiao from Yuehua School is really shameless? What's wrong?" "With his cultivation. He's only at the peak of the 9th layer transcendent realm, yet he wants to fight Qin Meng? Isn't he just putting on an act?" Yes. He probably knew that Lan Yu would go on stage. That's why he did that. He's really a disgusting and cunning villain." On the Sword King sect side, several higher-ups were whispering, but their voices were very loud, as if they were deliberately letting the Yuehua School's people hear them. "What? You're not convinced?" Wu Xiang asked coldly. "Why should I be convinced? Don't tell me that Ling Xiao can really defeat Qin Meng." One of the upper echelons of the Sword King sect said disdainfully, "What if he can win?" Wu Xiang smiled and said, "If this Ling Xiao can really defeat Qin Meng, this old man is willing to give him 50,000 mid-grade spiritual stones as the prize." The upper echelon of the Sword King sect said loudly, "Good, it's a deal. Miss Lan, let's let Ling Xiao fight this battle. Some people are not convinced. We have to show them what it means to be a genius." The Three Sects martial arts competition was originally a place to show off one's strength. If Ling Xiao had that ability, why not let him show it? What's more, in Wu Xiang's opinion, Ling Xiao didn't need to use his full strength to defeat Qin Meng. "Sect Master, let senior sister Lan go first. She's already on the stage. Anyway, there's still a lot of time left. It won't be too late for me to go on stage and compete with Miss Qin Meng later," Ling Xiao said with a smile. And fine. The two sides stopped arguing and the battle began. Qin Meng and Lan Yu were equal in strength and martial skills. Even their performance was on par. In the end, after 300 rounds, it was still a draw. This made the Sword King sect's higher-ups exclaim, "That Lan Yu should be the strongest disciple of Yuehua School, right? She's actually tied with our second-ranked core disciple. It doesn't look like she's that strong. You talk too much." Ling Xiao slowly got up and walked to the center of the stage. He looked at Qin Meng and said, "I don't want others to say that I'm taking advantage of you. You should go and rest for a while. If anyone else wants to spar with me, you can come up and give it a try." Lung Hao, Dai Yuling, and Lan Yu had already gone on stage. Ling Xiao didn't plan to go down until the Three Sects martial arts competition ended. This time he wanted to show the people from the Sword King sect and the Beast King Palace that the Yuehua sect had risen and was no longer the weak sect that could be bullied by others. Of course, the more important thing was that more sparring would be of great help to his cultivation and other aspects of improvement. "I'll go." Chao Yin was still brooding over the fact that he couldn't defeat Dai Yuling and Lung Hao. Therefore, he wanted to find balance with Ling Xiao. After all, Ling Xiao was only the 4th-ranked core disciple of Yuehua School. His ranking was even lower than Lung Hao's. "You're not my opponent. Don't come up and embarrass yourself." Ling Xiao glanced at Chao Yun and said indifferently, "Shameless boasting." Chao Yun naturally wouldn't back down because of Ling Xiao's words. He soared into the air and wanted to jump into the arena. "Get lost," Ling Xiao shouted. He didn't make a move, but he used the dragon roar technique. Chao Yun jumped up, but he was forced back. Then he fell heavily on the ground with a face full of shock and disbelief. What? Not to mention him, even the higher-ups of the Sword King sect and Beast King Palace were shocked. Although Chao Yun lost to Dai Yuling and Lung Hao, he still defeated Wang Lang and Li Hu. How could he lose so easily? Next, Ling Xiao said loudly, "I'll go." This time, it was Ying Wuya who went on stage. "Brother Ling, we've agreed to a battle before. Let's settle this fair and square today. I'll give you face." Ling Xiao looked at Ying Wuya and activated his mountain and river martial spirit. His eyes shone brightly. He already had an understanding of this person's strength. Ying Wuya's strength was on par with Tantai Lingzi's. He didn't even need to transform into his human dragon form to defeat his opponent. "Come on," Ying Wuya shouted, and the shadow of the golden-winged roc appeared behind him. Then his hands turned into eagle claws and pounced on Ling Xiao. His battle aura was very fierce. As he waved his claws, it was fierce and domineering. It was as if he could tear everything in front of him into pieces. The higher-ups of the Sword King sect and Beast King Palace couldn't help but be surprised. This guy is worthy of being a martial artist who inherited the golden-winged roc. Even Chen Meng would have a hard time winning against him. That's right. It'll be hard to determine the winner within 300 moves. Look at Ling Xiao. He only knows how to dodge and doesn't even have the strength to fight back. He'll definitely lose in less than 10 moves. Hearing this, the people from the Yuehua school sneered. Regardless of whether they hated Ling Xiao or supported Ling Xiao, this guy's strength was well known in the Yuehua school. The higher-ups of the Sword King sect and Beast King Palace were too hasty in coming to a conclusion so quickly. After 9 moves, Ling Xiao couldn't help but sigh and say, "Ying Wuya, you've really disappointed me." After saying this, he suddenly stopped dodging and directly stretched out his hands to meet Ying Wuya's claws head-on. Bang! Ying Wuya was directly sent flying. There was no suspense in his defeat. How was this possible? Had this guy been fooling around all this time? Chapter 680. The masters from the Beast King Palace and Sword King sect were all dumbfounded. Ling Xiao's strength had far exceeded their expectations. When Ying Wuya got up from the ground, he was completely dumbfounded. Back in the Plague Valley, Ling Xiao was just an outer disciple of the Yuehua school. The difference in strength between them was like heaven and earth. But now, both he and Ling Xiao were core disciples, yet he had been defeated without any suspense. He even wondered if Ling Xiao would have been able to last until the 9th move if he had used his full strength from the beginning. Perhaps he would have been defeated in 5 or 6 moves. Seeing Ling Xiao win, Jian Wuji's closed eyes finally opened again, and he couldn't help muttering to himself, "I really didn't expect to meet such a genius in the 3 sects martial arts competition." With just a peak 9th layer transcendent realm cultivation, he easily defeated a half-step heavenly venerable with 30% of his strength. What was a genius? In Jian Wuji's mind, only the Holy Sun could be considered a genius. However, Ling Xiao's performance seemed to not be inferior to the Holy Sun's. Should I defeat him here today? Jian Wuji actually felt a little restless. Forget it. Defeating him will only make him work harder. It's better to kill him in secret. Jian Wuji's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Although it was only for a moment, it showed that he felt Ling Xiao had become a threat to him. In his opinion, if he didn't stop Ling Xiao in time, this little brat would become the 2nd Holy Sun. Although his current opponents were the other 5 of the Holy Dynasty's 6 young lords, A rising star like Ling Xiao couldn't be underestimated. After Ling Xiao defeated Ingwea, the atmosphere in Sword Pavilion became even more tense. One had to know that Ingwea was the second-ranked core disciple of the Beast King Palace, while Ling Xiao was only the second-ranked core disciple of the Yuehua School. The fourth rank defeating the second rank was a bit unacceptable in itself, not to mention that Ling Xiao's cultivation was only at the peak of the Transcendent Realm 9th layer, a complete mismatch with his strength. If Ling Xiao could defeat the Decepticons, it would be equivalent to trampling on the Beast King Palace. The Yuehua School's name would at least be in the top 2 of the Eastern region. Their ranking among the 12 sects would definitely rise. The Beast King Palace Master's face was gloomy, but he didn't say anything. Yesterday he had humiliated Yuehua School outside the Sword King sect. He didn't expect retribution to come so quickly. From the looks of it, only Decepticons could save some face for the Beast King Palace. Otherwise, they would really lose all their face today. Decepticons, the face of our Beast King Palace depends on you. If you lose, don't come down. The Beast King Palace Master looked coldly at the Decepticons and said, although Ingwea was his most valued disciple, the Decepticons' cultivation was much higher than Ingwea's. Defeating Ling Xiao shouldn't be a problem. Wait. Just as the Decepticons was about to go on stage, Qin Meng stepped forward. Brother Tyrant, you should rest for a while. The battle between Ling Xiao and I hasn't started yet. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. It turned out that these two were treating him as an opportunity to crush the Yuehua School. Did they really think he was a soft persimmon that could be pinched so easily? No need to go through so much trouble. You two can come at me together. Ling Xiao looked at Chun Meng and the Decepticons with a smile that wasn't a smile. To be honest, if these two came at him together, he would have to transform into his ancient golden dragon form. Of course, there was another way, and that was to use the seal card. However, the seal card was a life-saving measure, so he wasn't willing to use it at this time. He also didn't want to use his ancient golden dragon form in front of so many people. In the worst-case scenario, he would just test how great his potential was. Only a challenging battle would be beneficial to his improvement. Otherwise, if the battle was too easy, the value of this exchange would be reduced. How arrogant! Kid, don't think that you're so strong just because you defeated Ingwea. In front of us, you're still nothing. The Decepticons and Chun Meng both felt that they could defeat Ling Xiao, so how could the two of them fight together? Even if they won, it wouldn't be a glorious victory. Ling Xiao's words also shocked everyone from the 3 sects. There were many arrogant people these days, but this was the first time they had seen someone as arrogant as him. A trivial peak 9th layer Transcendent Realm cultivator actually dared to challenge 2 half-step heavenly venerables at the same time. This was simply audacious to the extreme. How about this? You two stop arguing. Ling Xiao just fought, so let him rest a little while you two fight. Whoever wins will fight Ling Xiao. Jian Wuji said slowly. That's fine. These two were both respectful towards Jian Wuji, so they naturally didn't dare to disobey Jian Wuji's words. Ling Xiao, go rest. Jian Wuji looked at Ling Xiao and said indifferently, his tone completely commanding. Ling Xiao smiled and said, Many thanks for Brother Jian's kindness, but there's no need for that. If they don't want to fight, then you can. In any case, I don't care who I fight. Impudent. You think you're worthy of fighting Senior Brother Wuji? Chen Meng was furious. Jian Wuji wasn't just her eldest senior brother. He was also the person she had a crush on. She absolutely couldn't tolerate someone looking down on Jian Wuji like this. She jumped directly into the field and attacked Ling Xiao. Seeing this, Decepticons could only retreat for the time being. He couldn't really join forces with Chun Meng to deal with Ling Xiao. After all, this wasn't a fight, it was just a spar. Beast King Palace's palace master didn't say anything. He hadn't expected things to develop to this point, so he could only take one step at a time. In fact, As long as Chun Ming defeated Ling Xiao, then Decepticons defeated Qin Ming, it didn't seem impossible. Looking at the two swords in Chun Ming's hands, Ling Xiao crossed his hands behind his back, his expression still as indifferent as before, but a strange light flashed across his eyes. The sword that Chun Ming had thrust out was actually pulled back in an instant. He even took a few steps back. He was greatly astonished. What happened? Why did I retreat? But what was that feeling just now? Why did I feel like I was being stared at by the gods of hell? Qin Ming didn't know why she was like this, but she couldn't help but retreat. In the eyes of others, it was as if she had taken the initiative to admit defeat. Chun Ming, admit defeat immediately, or you'll be doomed eternally. The shadow of Yi Guxin appeared behind Ling Xiao, and then his pupils turned a terrifying blood-red color. His killing intent, accompanied by an astonishing aura, pounced on Chun Ming. No, of course, Qin Ming refused to admit defeat. However, in the next moment, she suddenly found that those sitting in the sword pavilion seemed to have released an astonishing, murderous aura towards her. They all sneered, then stood up and walked towards her. This feeling was so real that she couldn't tell if it was real or fake. Go to hell, you bitch. I won't like you, never. You'll only be a burden to me. Jian Wuji's figure pounced, and a sword light flashed. Qin Ming found that her body began to fall apart, as if she was being cut into pieces by the sword light. Chapter 681. The bone-piercing pain made Qin Ming scream uncontrollably. Not only did she feel the intense pain, but she also felt despair in the depths of her heart. If Qin Ming had any weakness, it would be Jian Wuji. Ling Xiao just took advantage of the loophole. With his powerful massacre will, he condensed an illusory image of Jian Wuji, causing Chun Ming to fall into a state of confusion. Let alone the fact that this time around, Ling Xiao's thunder constellation was infused into the will of slaughter, causing the speed of invasion to be even faster. In addition, there was also a paralyzing effect, causing the might of his soul force to be even more terrifying. Qin Ming had never met an opponent like Ling Xiao. Coupled with her admiration and love for Jian Wuji, she fell into the trap without any reaction. Then, Ling Xiao slowly walked towards Qin Ming. With a light kick, he sent Qin Ming flying out of the ring. Whoosh! The whole place was in an uproar. Qin Ming woke up after being kicked out of the ring. Seeing that she had fallen out of the ring, she was so angry that she wanted to cry. You're shameless. How dare you use such an unorthodox technique? Qin Ming scolded loudly. That's right. Since it's a spar, it should be fair and square. Using such a despicable technique is unfair. Chao Yin also shouted loudly. Shut up. Don't you think it's embarrassing? Chun Nanqing was indeed the sect leader of the Sword King sect. He shouted at Chao Yun and Qin Ming to stop. Although the secret soul technique was uncommon in the Sky Dragon continent, no one dared to say that it was an unorthodox technique. This was because there was an expert who specialized in the secret soul technique among the 12 immortals under the Human King realm. He did not know any martial arts. His only way of fighting was soul power. However, he was so strong that countless people felt ashamed of their inferiority. Even on the Sky Dragon continent, there were still experts who specialized in the secret soul technique. Mo Wushang, who was ranked second among the 6 young masters of the Sacred Dynasty, was an expert. Back then, the Holy Sun had to expend quite a bit of effort to defeat him. The Holy Sun and Mo Wushang were both disciples of the Heavenly King sect. This showed that the number 1 sect of the 12 sects lived up to its name. Thank you for letting Miss Qin Ming win. Ling Xiao smiled as he looked at Qin Ming. Then he looked at the higher-up of the Sword King sect and said, I wonder if Senior's bet is still valid. Of course. The Sword King sect's upper echelon's mouth twitched a few times. It was obvious that he was very unhappy, but there was nothing he could do. No matter how Ling Xiao defeated Qin Ming, there was no doubt that he had defeated Qin Ming. However, you defeated Qinmeng by using a soul secret technique. That can be considered a trick. If you have the guts, do you dare to make another bet with me? Oh, what kind of bet? Ling Xiao asked with a smile. If you can defeat the Decepticons without using your soul secret technique, I will give you 100,000 mid-grade spirit stones. I will not bargain, and I will give it to you immediately. The higher-up said coldly. 200,000. Ling Xiao said indifferently. What? Your appetite is really big. What? You don't dare to gamble? Ling Xiao asked with a smile. Bet. What's there to be afraid of? 200,000 it is. However, you must not use any soul secret technique. Otherwise it will be your loss. The Sword King Sect's upper echelon emphasized. Hee. Senior can rest assured on this point. Ling Xiao smiled, then looked at the crowd and said, Everyone be my witness today. If I can defeat the Decepticons without using my soul force, he will give me 200,000 mid-grade spirit stones. The higher-ups of the three sects nodded, tacitly agreeing to the bet. Jian Wuji no longer closed his eyes. Ling Xiao's defeat of Ying Wuya had already shocked him. Now, this Ling Xiao was also proficient in soul secret technique. It was the same path as Mo Wushang, whom he was wary of. This made his killing intent towards Ling Xiao even more intense. Although the current Ling Xiao was not enough to pose any threat to him, such a person had to be killed in the cradle. Otherwise, even if he was a baby dragon now, he would be able to soar into the 9 heavens in the future. How about it, Brother Ba? Are you still willing to exchange pointers with me? Ling Xiao looked at the Decepticons. Decepticons' cultivation was similar to Qinmeng's, and their combat ability was not far off. The two of them had fought many times in private, and all of them were exchanging pointers. Basically, they were evenly matched. To be honest, Ling Xiao's strange method of defeating Qinmeng made the Decepticons not dare to make a move. He was afraid that he would lose in such an embarrassing manner. Fortunately, Ling Xiao could not use any soul secret technique. What was there to be afraid of? Could it be that he, the #1 core disciple of the Beast King Palace, did not dare to fight? Of course. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The Decepticon tiger leaped into the battle. The only thing he was afraid of was Ling Xiao's soul secret technique. Since his opponent could not use it, there was nothing for him to be afraid of. Boom! Suddenly, Decepticons released all of his aura. A huge shadow of a black tiger appeared behind him, looking extremely ferocious. So much so that his energy shattered the fruit platter on the coffee table more than 10 meters away. Since Brother Ba is so confident, please make your move. I did not consume much energy in the battle with Qinmeng, so you don't have to be afraid. Come at me. Ling Xiao stood calmly in front of the Decepticons. His long black hair draped over his shoulders, and there was a faint smile on his face. He was as immovable as a mountain, standing there steadily. No matter how strong Decepticon's aura was, it could not make him move an inch. However, I need to remind Brother Ba that the higher your expectations, the greater your disappointment. You may face an outcome that you can't accept, so you must be mentally prepared. Tantai Lingzi glanced at Chang Yueying and asked in a low voice, Master, this Ling Xiao seems to be hiding something? Chang Yueying nodded slowly and said, You're right. This Ling Xiao has too many trump cards. I've lived for so long, but I've never seen someone who knows so many tricks that the enemy can't guard against. It's terrifying. How about Decepticons? Tantai Lingzi asked again. Chang Yueying took a deep breath and said, He's very strong. Although he's a disciple of the Beast King Palace, I have to say that he's much stronger than you. This will definitely be a tough battle, unless Ling Xiao uses the soul secret technique from earlier. Although Lan Yuer was unwilling to agree with Chang Yueying's analysis, she had to agree. Just now, she had analyzed the situation with the Decepticons. If she fought with the Decepticons, it would still be impossible to determine the victor within 300 moves. Although she believed that Ling Xiao would definitely win, she had to admit that this would definitely be a tough battle. Decepticons was like an erupting volcano. He was irritable, terrifying, and majestic, as if he wanted to destroy everything. However, Ling Xiao at this moment was more like a mysterious iceberg. He was quiet but very dangerous. The two's performance was completely different, but they both had the demeanor of an expert. The fight between the two of them was really worth looking forward to. Chapter 682. Anyone can talk big. Wait until you can take this move of mine. Otherwise, you don't even have the qualifications to make me go all out. Decepticon's aura was still very strong, but it kept gathering inwards, as if he was preparing for a terrifying move. Then Decepticons made a pouncing motion, complementing the black tiger behind him. This movement seemed very slow and did not have any momentum. However, in an instant, when he pounced, his aura completely changed. This attack was like a fierce tiger coming out of the mountain, a volcano erupting, thunder falling from the sky, and a stormy sea. The feeling of wanting to destroy everything made people mistakenly think that the end of the world had arrived. They could not help but tremble in fear. 9 moves of the Tyrant Heaven, Tiger out of the cage. This was the move of the tyrannical Sky Tiger. It was a martial skill that perfectly merged the attributes of one's true origin with the martial soul. Not only was it powerful, but its momentum was also vigorous. No wonder he was the #1 core disciple of the Beast King Palace. It was indeed powerful. Good move. Watch me. Seeing Decepticon's terrifying move, Ling Xiao did not retreat. Instead, he looked excited. At that moment, his pupils suddenly turned black and gold flames burned. A black divine dragon circled behind him, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, as if it wanted to destroy everything in the world. Ancient Hell Dragon Martial Soul. It's actually the Ancient Hell Dragon Martial Soul. Chun Nanqing stood up abruptly. His eyes were filled with greed and extreme desire. Hearing this, everyone was shocked, including the people from Yuehua School. They had always thought that Ling Xiao's martial soul was a black dragon. They did not expect it to be one of the 9 primordial dragon martial souls, the Ancient Hell Dragon Martial Soul. No wonder Ling Xiao's strength suddenly became so strong, so terrifying. Jian Wuji also stood up excitedly. Ling Xiao had moved him too much. He actually had one of the 9 strongest martial souls below the Mountain River martial soul. This was simply maddening. When Ling Xiao heard Chun Nanqing's words, he could not help but feel uneasy. Chun Nanqing could actually tell that his martial soul was the Ancient Hell Dragon Martial Soul. This was going to be troublesome. No, I have to cover it up and deceive him. He knew very well that his cultivation was still not strong enough. If the news of him obtaining the Ancient Hell Dragon Martial Soul were to spread, he would really become the target of public criticism. At that time, he would have to face countless dangers and crises. Rumble. The divine dragon's shadow shook and became more realistic. However, if one looked closely, they would find that although the shadow behind Ling Xiao was very similar to the ancient hell dragon, there was a difference. It should be a black dragon. The black dragon was the descendant of the ancient hell dragon. The two were very similar in appearance, but there was a big difference. The ancient hell dragon's dragon scales were black gold and burned with hell fire. Moreover, there was an obvious Dragon King mark on its forehead. Each of the 9 primordial Dragon Kings had a Dragon King mark. It represented their identity as a king. The ancient Hell Dragon was not the name of a race. It referred to one of the 9 Dragon Kings, the Dragon Slayer who had the Hell Dragon soul. It was the same for the other 8 Dragon Kings. Similar dragon races had other names, such as Black Dragon, Holy Dragon, Demon Dragon, White Dragon, Ghost Dragon, and so on. Similarly, the ancient Golden Dragon referred to the Golden Dragon Emperor, Pantheon. Although its descendants looked exactly like it, but lacked the Dragon King mark, they could only be called Golden Dragon, golden dragon, amber dragon, and so on. They would never be called ancient golden dragon. Phew! Chun Nanqing breathed a sigh of relief. So it's the ancient black dragon martial soul. I almost misjudged him, but this kid is really lucky. He actually got the ancient martial soul inheritance, and it's a very special dragon soul inheritance. Although it's not as good as the 9 Dragon Kings' martial soul inheritance, it's still very powerful. Wu Xiang and the others were a little disappointed. If Ling Xiao really got the ancient Hell Dragon soul inheritance, then Yuehua School's luck was really going to change. Seeing everyone's reaction, Ling Xiao finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had the Black Dragon King's dragon pearl in his body. He could use it to hide the appearance of the ancient Hell Dragon. Otherwise, this time it would be really troublesome. After this matter was settled, Ling Xiao began to focus on the battle. Rumble, in a moment, the Decepticons' attack was approaching. It was only one move, but it gave a feeling of surging and endless waves, as if one after another monstrous waves were crashing toward Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao stood there as steady as a mountain. Then he pushed his hands forward, and a huge shadow of the ancient Hell Dragon appeared in front of him. Its huge body blocked the tyrannical Sky Tiger's relentless attacks. The next moment, the dazzling black gold light collided with the white gold light, forming a dazzling fog that was so bright that it was difficult to open one's eyes. Then there was a continuous rumble, and the sound of plates and teacups shattering on the table could be heard. The entire sword pavilion was shaking nonstop. That Ling Xiao really took it. A peak transcendent realm 9th layer cultivator took half the power of a half-step Heavenly Venerable's attack. Ling Xiao really didn't use any soul secret techniques. Just now, he was purely using his martial spirit and true qi to defend himself. But this guy's martial spirit is actually the ancient Hell Dragon martial spirit. No wonder he was so confident in facing the Decepticons. It seems that Ling Xiao wasn't just spouting nonsense when he said he could defeat the Decepticons. Maybe he really does have the strength to do so. I don't think so. Although Ling Xiao blocked the Decepticons' attack, he even used his most reliable martial spirit to defend himself. Let's see what he can do next. That's true in terms of experience, calculation, and true qi. Ling Xiao is far inferior to the Decepticons. It's not easy for him to block this attack. He really might lose. Although most people were shocked by Ling Xiao's strength, they didn't expect him to be so strong. After careful analysis, however, they weren't very optimistic about Ling Xiao's chances. One had to know that just now the Decepticons' attack was just a probing attack, as if he was looking down on Ling Xiao. As for how much of his strength he had displayed, it was hard to say. After all, a half-step Heavenly Venerable with half of his strength was not an ordinary cultivator. It was difficult to estimate just how strong he was. Sitting in his seat, Nguya's face was a little pale. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. When you fought with me just now, you didn't even bother using your ancient Hell Dragon martial spirit. I didn't expect that in just a few months you would be so much stronger than me. Sect Master, after I go back, I want to take the chaotic beast path. Nguya suddenly said to the Beast King Palace Master. You should think about it carefully. The chaotic beast path is a path of death. For thousands of years, none of our Beast King Palace's disciples have ever come out alive. The Beast King Palace Master reminded. Chapter 683. Disciple understands, but disciple must go. Nguya's eyes flashed with a strong will to fight. Nguya knew how dangerous the chaotic beast path was. But if he wanted to catch up to Ling Xiao, he had to put his life on the line. It seems like misfortune is a blessing in disguise. Although you lost to Ling Xiao, your will to cultivate has become stronger. Good, when we return, I will personally lead the way for you. Thank you, sect leader. On the other side, the inner sect elder of the Sword King sect looked gloomy. He thought that Decepticons would be able to defeat Ling Xiao easily. After all, the difference in their cultivation was too big. If Ling Xiao did not use his secret soul technique, he would not be able to last more than a few moves. But now, it seemed that Decepticons might not be able to defeat Ling Xiao. Things were getting a little tricky now. He did not care about the 200,000 mid-grade spirit stones. As an inner sect elder, he could still afford to take out such a small amount of spirit stones. What he cared about was his reputation. Moreover, the rise of Ling Xiao meant that the rise of Yuehua School was not good news for the Sword King sect. Sect leader, Yuehua School is really rising. Shouldn't we think of a way to deal with it? The inner sect elder asked Chen Nanqing telepathically. Chen Nanqing snorted and replied, "Don't worry, I have already arranged a perfect hunting plan. This time, none of the people who came to the Sword King sect will leave alive. Yuehua sect can only wait to be trampled by our Sword King sect forever, never to rise again." Sect leader is indeed wise, but that Chang Yueli is not easy to deal with. She is an old ghost in the Grotto Heaven realm. Do you want to deal with her personally? They did not know that Wu Xiang was also in the Grotto Heaven realm. They were just one step behind. No need. That old ghost Chang Yueli can't wait for those people to die. When the time comes, just don't bother her. If Chen Nanqing didn't have a deep understanding of Yuehua School's situation, he wouldn't have been so confident in his plan. Of course, in the end, he still lacked first-hand information about Wu Xiang, Ling Xiao, and the others who had recently risen to prominence. He also disdained to cooperate with Chang Yueli, so it was normal for him to make a mistake in his judgment. During the battle, Ling Xiao could still vaguely feel Chen Nanqing's killing intent towards him. However, he was not afraid. He could not hide in the Yuehua School and cultivate forever. As long as he stood out, he would definitely attract the attention of these narrow-minded and vicious people. There was no use in being afraid. If it was a hurdle, then he would just step over it. Whether it would be Chen Nanqing or him who would die, this was still an unknown. As long as he was determined to win, he would be able to find a way to resolve this. After all, he possessed the mountain river martial spirit. He had to make good use of this most powerful martial soul. The reason why he had the opportunity to consider so many things was mainly because the Decepticons had suddenly become cautious after the first attack and did not continue to attack. Others might not know why, but Ling Xiao was very clear about it. Under the analysis ability of the mountain river martial spirit, the Decepticons' attack had nowhere to hide. The Decepticons had used a full 90% of his strength in that attack just now. An attack with 90% of his strength had been blocked by Ling Xiao. No matter what, this would make the Decepticons wary and cautious, not daring to underestimate him in the slightest. You are very good, very strong. As expected, you are not just good at talking. The Decepticons saw that Ling Xiao was looking at him, but he was accumulating true essence while speaking to delay the time. Ling Xiao smiled slightly and said, "You have already attacked. Now it is my turn." 9 meridians, Qi sword, Hell's dragon sword. Ling Xiao almost did not waste words with the Decepticons, because he had seen through the Decepticons' intentions. He took a step forward with his right foot, and then the black and gold light on his body boiled again, shining brightly and abnormally dazzling. He put his palms together, holding a huge black and gold long sword in his hands, piercing through the void towards the Decepticons. Chi, 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 chi. The air in front of him was pierced layer by layer, and the huge black and gold long sword burned with black and gold flames. For a moment, the surrounding air seemed to have solidified, and then collapsed and deformed. The people and scenery in front of him became fragmented and distorted. What sword technique is that? He can use it without using a weapon, and it is so powerful. Qin Meng was dumbfounded. Just now, she felt very vexed about losing to Ling Xiao, but at this time, even if she hated Ling Xiao, she had to admit that Ling Xiao's strength was absolutely qualified to fight with her. "Block it for me." Not only was Chen Meng shocked, the Decepticons in the field was even more shocked. Facing Ling Xiao's terrifying sword, he had no choice but to use all his skills. His chi transformed into a huge tiger claw and fiercely grabbed the huge black and gold sword. Ka ka ka! The huge sword stopped for a moment, but it was only for a moment. The black and gold flames on the huge sword became even more dazzling, and then it still slowly pierced towards the ceiling. Decepticon's face was solemn, and his chi was released without any regard for his life, not daring to slack off at all. The glaring white light made him as dazzling as the sun. He had exploded with astonishing battle strength. At this moment, Decepticons was actually able to display a level stronger than usual under the immense pressure. This was probably the benefit of sparring with an expert. 9 styles of the Tyrant Heaven, Black Tiger Raging Flame Claw. At the same time, Decepticon's hands were also burning with flames, but it was a scarlet red flame that wrapped around his hands. The terrifying power finally completely stopped the Hell's Dragon sword from advancing. Pung! The Hell's Dragon sword exploded. However, Decepticon's hands were also severely damaged, and both of his arms were constantly trembling. He not only displayed his full strength, but even exceeded it, and only then was he able to block Ling Xiao's attack. Oh! Decepticons suddenly let out an ear-piercing roar, and his body began to change. His original human form actually turned into a tiger man. Ling Xiao had always felt that when human warriors used their martial souls, they could actually fuse with their martial souls and then enter different forms. However, this also required talent. Out of 10 people, there might be 3 who could enter the human martial soul fusion state. However, out of these 3 people, only 1 could enter the complete martial soul transformation state. Ling Xiao's human dragon form was very special, and the immemorial golden dragon form was even more special. Today, he was overjoyed to meet a warrior who could enter the Tiger Man form. The earlier he met such an opponent, the better, because the sooner he could find a way to deal with it. From the moment he entered the fusion state, he could be divided into 10 forms. The first form was the weakest and was the closest to a human. The 10th form was the strongest and was almost a complete martial soul transformation. Decepticon's Tiger Man form was only the first form, but even so it could already increase his overall strength by 10%. This 10% of his strength included strength, speed, true essence, and all other aspects, including his 5 senses and reaction. They would all increase at the same time. This was equivalent to a completely new change.